Faites appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier, Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent, Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce. Madame le député Doublet.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député La Hegarat.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Osef. Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles. Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott. Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham. Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howe.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson. Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Sir, Madame le Connétable.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. I think you hold up your left hand. It's your right. Yes. Perhaps you could stand up and take the oath again. Thank you.
Okay.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
So, Madame le Connétable is attending to family matters today, but will be in tomorrow. Could I ask that she be excused, please?
Are you able to provide any indication of what the family matters might be?
Yes, sir. Her husband died a year ago, and she's attending to subsequent matters.
I'm sure would agree. Yes, very well. Excusez.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Sir, the Constable of St. Juan is attending a hospital appointment in connection with his recent surgery, and he will try to join us as soon as he can on Teams. Thank you.
Excusez for the time being then.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Madame le député Alves.
Défaut.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore.
Défaut.
Monsieur le député Joseph.
So Deputy Joseph, like many people, have been caught up in the flight delays caused by Storm Dara. He is now in the island, but he needs to go and make himself presentable, and he'll be with us shortly. I wonder if he could be excused.
Have you any idea how long that will take? Very well. Well, in which case,
I imagine he won't be long at all, sir.
members agree excusez until the deputy can join us. Yes.
Madame le député Porret.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le député Porret est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le député Scott.
Défaut.
Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
It's absent on maternity, I should say. Les états sont constitués. Your members will join me in welcoming His Excellency to the chamber this morning. There are a number of subordinate actions under B. Also, a number of matters to be presented or laid as described in the consolidated order paper under section C. The following matters have been lodged. A public election extension of eligibility criteria amendment at P65 lodged by Deputy Scott. Modern languages in schools P74 amendment lodged by the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Support scheme for individuals qualifying to represent Jersey in off-island competitions, P82 amendment, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Elected Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the States Assembly selection, second amendment, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee, P83. Selection of elected member to preside at States meetings, lodged by Deputy Gorst, P86. And under E, the following matters have been withdrawn. Elected Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the States Assembly selection and appointment, P83, and a number of amendments lodged in connection with the primary proposition. Answers have been submitted to written questions under L, and come now to oral questions.
Sir, please, could I raise the defo on Deputy Scott?
Yes, the defo is raised on Deputy Scott.
Sorry, and sir, before you move on to oral questions, my son is singing outside at the soup kitchen between 11:30 and 12, and I hope to join to watch, not to sing. But my question number 12, potentially, depending on time management, could fall within that time frame. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to, when we get towards 11:30, if number 12, question 12, hasn't been touched on yet, that we could move that up the...
Well, that's a matter for the Assembly, the order paper having now been lodged.
Okay, so...
And I suggest perhaps we'll see how we go, and if you're concerned and you feel time coming on apace, if you'd like to just suggest to the Assembly, then it'll be a matter for the Assembly as to whether we change.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Very well. The first question, Deputy Jeune, will ask of the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to her response to written question 95, 2024, and the anticipated launch of the Youth Justice Strategy during the summer of 2024, will the Minister advise why the strategy has not yet been published?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. The Youth Justice Strategy has taken a significant time to finalise for a number of reasons, and there has been a significant amount of work undertaken this year. In redefining the strategy to align with building a safer community, as indicated, we would, in answer to the previous Deputy's written question, it became clear that a number of changes were needed. Ongoing discussions with stakeholders indicated that there were concerns that the strategy was too aspirational, my apologies, sir, and not representative of the challenges in the existing youth justice system. Whilst the strategy clearly and rightly sought to shift the focus towards prevention, it became apparent that the strategy needed to also focus on understanding current challenges and addressing these concerns. The strategy was redrafted in October-November of this year to address concerns and to ensure it was representative of the current system and aligned with the wider government's priorities. I delegated responsibility for the strategy to my Assistant Minister last month, as he has responsibility for children and also would be able to jointly do that, so it made sense, sir. A private scrutiny briefing has since been held and a few further amendments were suggested, and I am pleased to say that I have the final draft in my hand, which we hope to publish in January.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, and thank the Minister for her answer, but could the Minister outline exactly what has been changed to this strategy since December 2023, or put another way, since the last government had a strategy that was about to be published?
Sir, I cannot give a finite appraisal of exactly what has been changed. However, as I stated, it was quite aspirational, and there are limits within some of our criminal justice systems in order for us to be able to necessarily work through the strategy as it was. I appreciate that the Deputy says that it was ready to go in the previous government, sir. However, the government changed at the end of January, and the coordinator, which was employed at the beginning of the year for the Building a Safer Community, has needed to work as the responsibility has for the youth justice strategy has moved to that individual. And it was important, sir, that that individual had an ability to be able to work with the strategy and all the key stakeholders. That is why it has taken longer to actually facilitate having it ready to roll. And as I said, sir, I have the final draft, which landed with me on Sunday afternoon, and I have literally read over it once, and I will be focusing on that, and it will be completed by myself this week, sir.
Well, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned in both answers word aspirational. Would the Minister give examples what aspirational things were cut out from the draft of the strategy?
Sir, as I stated, I couldn't tell you exactly what has and has not been removed. What I will say is that the youth justice system is going to be that all partnerships will work together. And from my perspective, we have to have a system whereby we feel that we are able to achieve those objectives of what that strategy says. So if the strategy says that no children should end up in the criminal justice system, it is therefore not possible to do that if we haven't actually got all of the areas that we are able to do to actually prevent that from happening. So we need to do a lot of work to be able to put preventative measures in so that the young people do not end up in the criminal justice system.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Absolutely. It's very interesting that so that the Minister cannot give specific example, because when we are talking about aspirational or ambitious, at least I would like to have some clarity. What does it mean in practice when we said it's too much?
Sir, we can all be aspirational. However, we also have to be able to achieve what we want to achieve in a given period of time. It was clear that there was a number of elements that had been withdrawn from the system, as in, for example, all of the work that was done within schools had been removed in the not the previous government, but the previous government to that. And so we didn't have, for example, Prison Me No Way. So therefore, we then reintroduced it under the previous Home Affairs Minister, which I'm very pleased occurred, because we need to be able to provide young people with education in relation to what is and isn't right, and also we need to be able to balance that with achieving our aims, which is to keep young people away from the criminal justice system as much as we possibly can.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's initial answer, she said that one of the problems with the one of the things that needed to be achieved with the strategy was to align with wider government priorities. Can she say in what way the previous strategy was not aligned with government priorities?
So, as I've stated, the priority is that young people are kept out of the criminal justice system, and that young people, particularly children, are put first in the whole of the system. If we actually have a system whereby we haven't got the resources and we haven't got the elements in place to be able to achieve those aspirations, then the system will fail. If the system fails, then we're failing young people. So from my point of view, it was identified through all of the stakeholders' inputs that some of those things may not be achievable. So the stakeholders had further opportunities for feedback. And just as an example, sir, I will give you a timeline. As from the beginning of January, no, sorry, sir, yes, from early 2024, the strategy was shared with stakeholders, and a stakeholders meeting was held in May to discuss strategy, and there was excellent engagement. They then were asked to prioritise their actions and revise what they thought was achievable and to rate that achievability, bearing in mind there is no extra funding. So the concerns were raised by some of the stakeholders that some of those things that they would not be able to achieve. And as I said, sir, we have 18 months in which to achieve things, and it is not appropriate, in my point of view, to put in things that which we cannot achieve.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir, I thank the Minister for that answer, which is quite interesting. She seems to be saying that the strategy should only reflect what is achievable, for example, around youth justice. But can she explain why it isn't actually the other way round, that the strategy tells you what needs to be done and drives the change you need?
So I don't disagree with what the Deputy is saying. However, as I said, there is no, to me, if you're going to create a strategy, you create a strategy in consultation with the stakeholders and what those stakeholders think is achievable. If you create a strategy which stakeholders say they do not believe that they are able to achieve, then surely, sir, that is a negative impact.
Deputy Miles, and then final supplementary, Deputy Chair. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister be quite precise about what it was that stakeholders said they couldn't achieve?
As I said, sir, there were some concerns raised in some of the ability to actually deal with young people who ended up in the criminal justice system. So therefore, we needed to have things in place to be able to deal with those young people if we had to.
Supplemental, Deputy Miles.
I'm not sure my question was answered. Could the Minister be precise about what it was that stakeholders said they couldn't achieve?
Sir, as I said, there are elements of the strategy which deals with the young people and then they go into the criminal justice system. There's things within the criminal justice system in which they may not have been achievable had we remained with the strategy as it was.
I think the question was those things that were said by stakeholders that they couldn't achieve.
Sir, this goes back to May, and I have not got that long a memory, sir.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy General.
The Assistant Minister for Justice and Home Affairs at the last state sitting said that he couldn't say how many children have been held criminally responsible for their actions between the age of 10 and 14 in the last 3 years and what's been the consequences. Would the Minister be able to answer this question?
Sir, I wouldn't be able to give figures in relation to this without prior notice, because obviously this would be a matter I would need to actually get stats from the States of Jersey Police. And therefore, I cannot answer that question.
Very well, we come to question 2.
Sir, may I raise Defo on Deputy Alves, please?
Yes, Deputy Alves, the defo is raised. We come to question 2. The Deputy Andrews will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister detail the government's main achievements since he took office?
Thank you, sir. How long have we got?
1 minute. 1 minute 30 seconds.
So I do my best. The role of any government is to deliver good governance, and I believe one of our achievements is working cohesively as a government. Since its inception, sir, the government has worked together well and continues to work together well. We make decisions based on consensus following robust discussions and debate. We operate in an environment where it is okay to disagree. In fact, it's important to disagree because that delivers better debates. Decisions are made so democratically without fear or favour in an environment where all ministers and assistant ministers work together to
Sir, I must say this is not answering the question.
To deliver the best outcomes for islanders, sir.
I'm asked for a ruling, I think, an answer which is protean in its form can be answered in a way which is equally protean, I'm afraid. And the reality of it is that you've asked for a very general statement, and an achievement can be an achievement in internal processing as well as an achievement in external results. And I'm afraid a general question is inevitably going to give rise to a general answer. Please carry on, Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I make the point about the way the government is working well together, because that is a vital component of achieving anything. Because if you've got a government that doesn't work well together, that delays a decision, sir. And to be more specific, we have delivered a common strategic policy which was published early in April and supported by the Assembly. In early August, we lodged the budget after a lot of preparation, and that was approved by the Assembly, sir. That facilitated a lot of action in relation to the corporate strategic policy. The move to a living wage, the journey to a high wage economy has started. Overdale has been demolished, planning application for the new hospital received, teachers' pay award was agreed, improvements to the planning service are underway, sir. Moneyval assessment recognised and acted upon. We have launched the Island's first Sustainable Finance Action Plan, implementing all the recommendation of violence against women and girls, sir. There's 23 items on the list I've got here, but I won't say them all, sir, but it was just to demonstrate that we're making good progress.
Very much. Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, please, sir. One of the things that the Minister has predicated is the importance of curbing growth in the public sector, and I would like to know what actions he has taken to curb growth and to ensure that any future budget will potentially see reductions in overall public sector spend.
The actions we've taken as a government, sir, is to put in place a policy in relation to the size of the public sector and charge the Chief Executive and the senior management team with delivering that. That work is underway, sir. We are at the early stages of reorganisation of the senior management levels across the public sector, sir. We've also put a temporary break on the engagements of consultants unless it's essential, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Does the Chief Minister agree that one thing his government could rightly be criticised of, and I've heard it from constituents, is that they don't often publicise the good news and the successes of government? And would the Minister explain where he believes that the line lies in terms of government between blowing its own trumpet and being accused of putting out positive spin and propaganda versus actually not necessarily engaging with the public sector?
It's not apparent to me that that fits within the parameters of the government's main achievements since he took office.
I think it is, sir, because I think, as you said, a protein question can attract protein supplementaries.
No, I'm not sure they can.
I will look up that word in a moment.
Well, if it helps, I'm looking it up now to make sure I've used it correctly. But I think. So, any other question?
I think so. It is a genuine question. It relates to processes, and does he think it's important that governments actually, in order to keep the public on board with what they're doing, also publicise that, and that needs to be considered as one of the list?
I'm happy to answer that. So we don't. I think we've always agreed. I think collectively that actions speak louder than words. So we do announce most of the key decisions, as I'm aware, through the channels of the media. So we're perhaps not very good at blowing around trumpet. We'd rather get things done and make and see the impacts on islanders' lives. So, but the point is taken. So we're trying to improve our communication.
And supplemental question, Deputy Daddy.
No, sir.
Deputy Ozef.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if the Chief Minister would, following his supplementary answer that he's got a cohesive government, does he think one of the achievements has been an achievement to have a government, but actually have a state assembly that sometimes, and I don't want to be a negative, but sometimes feels kind of excluded? The government gets its way, as was clear in the budget, in the majority of the cases.
No, I don't generally agree with that statement here. The statement of the Deputy, sir. This government seeks to work and make decisions as a government and bring important propositions to the Assembly for debate. And I think we have good debates. And I'm pleased to say that the government has managed to win the majority of the propositions because we've had good debates about it. And as I say, when things get tough, so we shouldn't raise our voices, so we should raise our arguments.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ozef.
The question is whether or not the government is succeeding with effectively a majority, which is, does the Chief Minister have any concerns about the fact that the government achieves its majority, achieves its will, which obviously governments do, and they want to do that, and that's fair enough. But are they doing it by compromising on the rights of members because there's a block majority of his coalition partners, if you like? And I say that in a positive way.
I appreciate that, and I think that might be a question you could reserve for the Chief Minister when he answers questions without notice, if that's what you wish. But I don't think it fits within these definitions.
Very good,
well, final supplemental, Deputy Andrews. Very much. For everyone's, not everyone's, but Deputy Tadier's and mine assistance, protean, tending to and able to change frequently or easily, it's difficult to comprehend the whole of this protean subject. Alternatively, able to do many things, versatile, protean thinkers who scan the horizons of work and society, if that assists. Well, I'm not sure that my iPhone deserves the applause, but very much indeed. We come to question 3. The Deputy Catherine Curtis will ask of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. In relation to islanders buying goods online, will the Minister advise what work he is undertaking, if any, regarding online businesses and their policies for shipping to Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. So it is a decision for individual businesses as to whether they wish to supply to Jersey. And with this in mind, my department does not work specifically to encourage any particular online retailers to sell to the island. However, we are, of course, keen to ensure that islanders have the opportunity to purchase from a wide range of retailers, and online retailers, that is. And while some retailers will have restrictions, and indeed do have restrictions on the regions to which they deliver, having a resilient, efficient and quick supply chain is an important part of ensuring retailers can integrate themselves easily.
Supplemental question.
But does the Minister agree that Jersey residents should deserve to be treated like other residents of the British Isles and be able to access the same retail websites?
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy for her question. It is not for me to agree or disagree one or the other. Businesses, when they are seeking to supply smaller jurisdictions, sometimes choose not to because of the differences between the smaller jurisdictions and the larger jurisdiction to which they are a partner of. And indeed, this can be seen, sir, with one of the major online platforms, which has a long list of small jurisdictions which it does not supply devices to. And I believe that is likely to be because of differences in taxation, such as value-added tax, in our case, goods and services tax. And so I believe that is often the reason. It is administrative differences that these very large corporations, often large corporations, choose not to work within those administrative differences.
Very well, we come to question 4. The Deputy Kovac will ask for the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise which healthcare departments currently have waiting lists exceeding 6 months for outpatient appointments, and what work has been undertaken or is being considered to address these waiting times?
Minister.
Sir, at the end of November, departments that had a median waiting time greater than 6 months are clinical genetics, bariatric medicine, and gastroenterology. Clinical genetics, which is a screening service, is being addressed through the application of new software. All patients referred into the service who have waited over 52 weeks have now received a family history questionnaire to complete and to return. Responses are then uploaded into the new software, which determines what level of risk the patient has of developing breast cancer. Those at moderate risk or high risk are offered further appointments, with those at low risk discharged from the service. It's expected that by the end of Q2 2025, there will be no patients waiting longer than 6 months for this screening service. The bariatric pathway, which is all pre-surgery, is also being reviewed to help reduce waiting lists. Gastroenterology service is being addressed through similar initiatives and additional staff. The waiting list initiatives have been provided throughout 2024 by an external provider who's also supporting endoscopy capacity. Additional output clinics have also been undertaken, and a new IBD nurse has been recruited. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Kovac.
Yes, thank you. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure that the waiting times published on the website are consistently accurate and that patients are not informed of a longer wait only after they have already been waiting for a significant period?
I think I've outlined some of the work that's going on, sir. I wasn't aware of the second part of that question happening. Now that I am, I shall certainly inquire into it and deal with it as best I can. Thank you.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise what notice patients are given if their waiting time is going to exceed a certain period?
Sir, off the top of my head, I can't provide that information.
Supplemental to that?
Yes, sir. Does the Minister agree that if there's long waiting times, it would be good for patients to receive acknowledgement that they actually have a pending appointment within the system, rather than having to revert back to GPs to ensure acknowledgement of their appointment without patients?
So these are all sort of fairly fine points of detail. There's a great deal of work going on in a number of different departments that relate to all this sort of thing. So it's very difficult for me to provide specific answers to very detailed questions of that nature.
Final supplemental, Deputy Kovac.
Thank you. What additional resources or strategies is the Minister considering to reduce even further waiting times for both patients' appointments and diagnostic tests, and to ensure these measures are communicated effectively to the public?
So we're not applying any extra resources because we simply don't have any. The work we're doing is the work we're doing, and I've done as best I can to explain in overall terms. If the Deputy would want to meet with any specific clinician in relation to any specific department, I'd be very happy to arrange for her to do so, sir.
Much, very well. We come to question 5. The Deputy Ward will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources.
Thank you, sir. And will the Minister advise the rationale and anticipated benefits of appointing a UK recruitment agency and advertising the Chief Executive of Andium Home's vacancy off island, and to detail the associated costs?
Thank you, sir. Sir, in accordance with Jersey Appointments Commission policy on senior recruitment for independent bodies, the recruitment process for Andium Home's new CEO is being independently overseen by a designated Appointments Commissioner. The Jersey Appointments Commission has confirmed that the Board have applied a fair and robust process in selecting a recruitment agency and received tenders from both local and UK-based firms with a strong background in recruitment to senior roles, including in affordable housing providers, and having experience of working in Jersey. The appointed Commissioner is satisfied that an appropriate decision was made. Odgers, who were the successful recruitment agency, have been instructed by the Board to conduct their extensive search both in Jersey and the UK, and will ensure a fair process for all applicants. Whilst the Board is using a UK-based agency to support them in the recruitment of this critical role, they are fully committed in actively promoting the role on island. This is an important and unique role for the island, and it's essential that Andium are able to recruit from a broad, diverse and appropriately skilled talent pool to ensure they secure the very best candidate for the role. Andium are the island's largest social housing provider, with some 4,900 homes housing over 10,000 islanders, and a further 1,000 homes are being delivered in the next few years. Fees are a matter between Andium and the agency. However, I would expect the fees to be standard for this type and level of recruitment. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, sir, and thank the Minister for her answer. How would the Minister measure what is the economic loss to our economy of not using a local procurement agency in this instance?
I think it's very difficult to measure economic loss. A fee will be paid to someone in the UK rather than being paid to someone in Jersey. However, it is important that we do get the right candidate, and by using an agency that is not up to scratch, we may suffer a much greater economic loss by getting a poorer candidate, and that is why we have to make sure we have an agency who have the best contacts to get the very best candidate for the role. Thank you. And sir, I'm sorry, that question was not to demean any of our current agencies, but the point is that having a UK-based agency will have greater contacts in the UK to make sure we get the best role.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Given the local nature of Andium Homes, and given that the current incumbent is about to retire after some 20 years, can the Minister explain what succession planning processes have been going on at Andium Homes?
Sir, Andium have a succession plan for all areas of business, which focuses on the development of their existing staff. Internal applications for the role will be positively welcomed, but any appointment will have to be made on merit alone. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Miles.
Sir.
Deputy Gardner.
First also, can I raise a defo on Deputy Moore, please?
Yes, defo is raised on Deputy Moore.
I put my light on, sir, when I've heard the expression that the local agencies are not up to scratch, and I was a bit concerned. So would the Minister explain why we are going first to outside of Jersey agency before we explore possibilities of the succession plan, which should be in place, or local agencies, before we are thinking that outside of Jersey we have much better candidates?
Sir, firstly, I did not intend to demean local agencies, and I certainly did not say that they were not up to scratch. Andium took tenders from 2 local agencies and from 2 UK agencies and selected the one that they thought best with the best contact to get the best candidate for the role. This is a very important role for the There is succession planning, but as I've also said, the Appointments Commission, there is a Jersey Appointments Commission process that says there must be an open and fair recruitment process. The Appointments Commission are supervising the entire process. There is a designated appointed commissioner to ensure that there is a fair process, and the process must follow those rules. And we cannot, it would not be appropriate to simply select someone internally without going through a full process. But if anybody internally wishes to apply, their application will be considered in the same way as any other application that is received.
Supplemental question, Deputy. I have Deputy Moore, then Deputy Tadier, and then final supplementary. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. When the Deputy describes the search for the best candidate, how will the weighting be directed in terms of the understanding of the local market and the local environment for the tenants and the business model of Andium Homes?
So that's really a matter for, as I say, there is a fair process. I don't think there will necessarily be a weighting to say that a local person is necessarily better. What is important, as I say, Andium has almost 5,000 homes. They're the largest developer. They have issued a very detailed candidate brief. There will be other social housing providers all over the UK who may have people who are entirely up to the job in Jersey, and it is important that we do get the right person for the job. It may be that the right person for the job is already in Jersey, and we are speculating, but there must be a fair process to make sure that we do have someone who is best for the job. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the Minister if she has read the former Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel review into recruitment and retention.
No, sir, I haven't.
Very well. Deputy Tadier.
So my question isn't so much about why we're not recruiting locally, but why we're simply recruiting in the UK. And if a broad and diverse pool of talent is sought, why is a European agency not used? Because to try and attract multilingual and suitably qualified individuals from the likes of Poland, Portugal, Romania and France, just to name a few countries.
Sir, I didn't say that. I think I was very clear in my original answer that the board are committed to making sure that this role is properly advertised and that there will be an extensive search in Jersey and in the UK. I understand his question, but I think the UK and the market in the UK is probably closer to Jersey than it is in Romania. I don't know what social housing is like in Portugal or Romania or Poland. And we have to, I think it is still the case. I imagine that the vast majority of tenants are English speaking, as are most of the board. Thank you, sir. But I don't think that would stop someone from any of those jurisdictions applying if they were minded to do so.
Thanks, sir. If geographical distance is one of the reasons for not recruiting in Europe, then perhaps we could think about Normandy and Brittany, which I think are much closer geographically than the southernmost point of the UK. And does she recognise that that individual, if anyone were recruited from there, there'd be a presumption that they would speak English, so the idea that they wouldn't be able to communicate on behalf of Andium is actually incorrect. Does she accept that?
Sir, I think government and government agencies get enough criticism by bringing in people from the UK. When we start bringing in people from all over Europe, I think that's an additional challenge. If somebody from another jurisdiction wishes to apply for a job in Jersey, they are very able and willing to do so. The vacancies will be advertised. They will be advertised locally on gov.je, on Andium Homes' own social media platforms, and by the recruitment agency. Jobs in Jersey are very easy to identify and apply for, I believe. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister not agree that this process sends out a message that we don't have the calibre of individual on island despite a significant succession plan already being in place?
No, I don't agree with that. And I think if we want to simply recruit from within Andium, then we have to go and discuss that with the Jersey Appointments Commission. We have a process for senior appointments, and I'm quite sure if someone from Andium or from anywhere was given the job and proven there would be criticism for not having a full and fair and open process. We are following the Jersey Appointments Commission process, which has been agreed, I believe, by this Assembly, and I don't think we can do anything else than follow that process. And if we start making exceptions for Andium, we would start making exceptions for all the other ALOs and state-owned entities and every other body where candidates are recruited following that process, and we should follow that process. Thank you, sir.
Well, we come to question 6. The Deputy Ward will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. It's nice to be so popular. In relation to the recently erected scaffolding on the western side of the Lido at Depart, I'm quickly saying western side. I'm sure my geography is correct on that one. Will the Minister advise the purpose of the scaffolding, whether a fixed or daily charge is being incurred, what that cost or daily rate is, and provide an anticipated date of commencement for the works?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. I think his geography is spot on this morning. So the purpose of the scaffold is to allow safe access to the western wall to carry out remedial repairs in a safe manner whilst maintaining its integrity through varying weather conditions. Initially, it was intended to employ rope access techniques, but given the work that is required, this wasn't considered appropriate in terms of safety and undertaking the work efficiently. A fixed charge of £14,996.50 is being incurred. The scaffold is due to be completed either today or tomorrow, weather permitting, and this will allow works to commence shortly afterwards. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir. Last weekend we saw Storm Dara passing through this island. Does the Minister believe that constructing scaffolding in a highly exposed site in the depth of winter is a good use of taxpayers' money?
Sir, thankfully, I don't believe there was any issues with the scaffold during the storm last week. So we have a challenge. We can either do the work in the midsummer, which would be the best time, but unfortunately, it would be most unpopular with the users of the site and the tenants of the site, I should imagine. So we have to do things out of season. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister please clarify, as he mentioned, it's 14,000 something as a fixed price, for how long the scaffolding could be there for this price without paying extras?
I don't have that date to hand, sir, but we expect the work to be completed early next year. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Gardner.
So, Minister does not anticipate that we will need to pay extra for the scaffolding being in place for longer than expected?
So I don't anticipate paying extra, sir, but what we, talking to the structural engineers and the main contractor, the cracked render on the elevation was believed to be more than initially anticipated, and that is why we are using scaffold and not rope access. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
No, thank you, sir.
Very much. Coming now to question 7, the Deputy Gardner will ask of the same Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether there are any plans to enhance the public use of the hall in Howard Davis Park, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy. In answer to the question, it's yes, sir. We do hope to get more public access to the hall. We're currently exploring possibilities for the future use of the hall and committed to identifying and facilitating as many opportunities as possible for its public use. The hall will be transferred to Jersey Property Holdings on the 1st of January 2025, and I'd welcome suggestions from members and the community at that large. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental?
Thank you, sir. The hall was under 2-year under contract with the private company, and as Minister indicated in the answer to the written questions, there might be another call for expressions of interest for our private companies to manage the public hall. Would it be very clear terms to put onto the private companies to open the hall for the public use?
Thank you, sir. Initial discussions, sir, with bodies that are familiar with operating historical buildings, sir, no discussions, to my knowledge, have taken place with any private operator. Thank you, sir.
Very well, we come to question 8, that Deputy Renner will ask for the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to publication of the Finance Report M10 by the Health and Community Services Advisory Board and the forecast deficit of £28 million for 2024, will the Minister detail what steps, if any, he plans to take in the next 6 months to prevent a health overspend in 2025?
Minister.
Sir, I'm happy to inform Deputy Renner that every possible effort has been made to improve efficiency and to introduce stronger budgetary controls in 2025. As the Deputy will know from the M10 Finance Report, detailed budget planning for 25 has been underway for some time and it should be signed off by the end of this month. Most importantly, HCS has now taken a more robust and evidence-based approach to budget planning, with work progressing on the development of a proper operating plan. On an individual basis, it includes the introduction of a new financial reporting system that will enable accountable budget owners to monitor and manage their budgets in a more accurate and timely way. The process, which covers all of the main specialities, is starting with the 2025 budget, and it should be fully completed by the beginning of 2026. Overall, it will allow HCS a much more accurate means of determining the level of service that fits in with the available budget funding, which for 2025 amounts to £322 million. So all of that said, it's well known that health faces significant inflationary pressures that exceed the formula-driven budget funding provided by government to cover non-pay inflation. Notwithstanding the £3.2 million savings made last year and the £8.1 million savings made this year under the Financial Recovery Plan, or the additional £8 million plan for 2025 and £9 million for 2026, it should be expected that unless and until we address the business of raising more money for healthcare, something that we fully intend to do next year, these cost pressures will require the making of some very difficult decisions about the level of service that we provide in future, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question?
Yes, so the overspend was £20 million in 2023 and £28 million in 2024. And in the budget, savings under the Financial Recovery Plan that the Minister mentioned were pushed back so that they are not as ambitious. Can he state with any confidence that he will not be coming back to his ministerial colleagues for more money next year to bail out and overspend again?
I think I'll make a comment about the terminology, sir, because it's very unhelpful and it continues. Overspend and deficit, it's easy to bandy those comments around, but when you start a year without sufficient funding to deliver the services you've got to deliver, it stands to reason that you're going to end up with a deficit or an overspend. I think I'm comfortable to say that every effort that can be made is being made, and that we'll make every effort not to overspend at all. But in terms of cast iron guarantees, that would be difficult. As I mentioned in the first response, we're going to be doing some work in the coming year about raising extra money by one means or another, that yet to be determined. So it may be that we can get some of that underway and in place before the end of the year, which would be very helpful, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I think it's really unhelpful that the Health Minister doesn't take responsibility for overspending, because in 2023 it was high overspend, and follow this overspend, 50 extra million was allocated to the health budget and was cut from other departments to ensure that the deficit would be covered, and with this 28 million was spent. Would the Minister explain to the Assembly what are the steps from the financial recovery has taken place in 2024? What efforts, specific steps were taken in 2024 to ensure that we have financial recovery?
So, I'm being accused of not taking responsibility. I don't mind taking responsibility for it. That's fine. As I said in my second response, when you start a year without enough money, you're going to finish up with an overspend. It's well known that health inflation runs well above standard inflation, and during the period of COVID and ongoing, I think if you check the figures, I'm led to believe that we didn't receive the full figure of inflation that was required. And during that period, health inflation has far exceeded other inflationary pressures. It's quite simple. We came towards last Christmas. We knew there was going to be a further overspend over and above the 24 that I'd mentioned, and we had a choice. We could close wards and we could stop operations. That would have saved money, and if the Assembly thinks that's a good idea, I'm afraid I don't agree with them, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Absolutely, but interesting that Minister didn't answer what steps did he take at the financial recovery. There were several suggestions on workforce transformation, manage supply and demand, and managing supplies. I can continue to give options for the transformation that has been suggested. Would the Minister give at least a couple examples what has been done differently to save the money?
So I think the Deputy gave 3 examples herself. There's a financial recovery plan. It's a very detailed plan, and that's been put in place. We're very fortunate. We've got a very competent individual leading this process. We've spent £500,000 with KPMG in trying to get the finances right. It has to be said that, and I think perhaps the former Health Minister might join me in agreeing with this, that the finances weren't desperately well managed, certainly up to the point that I took office, and there's still work to be done. So, as far as quoting other individual instances, I would just ask the Deputy to refer to the financial recovery plan, sir, and perhaps read the drivers of the deficit document as well, which would give her a very good picture of why we are where we are.
I have Deputy Jean, Deputy Miles, and then final supplementary.
Well, firstly, sir, my light had been on and I thought you'd seen it. But secondly, the Minister didn't answer the question. He was asked to give examples, and I think the Assembly should hear his examples.
Well, my hearing was that the Minister did give 2 examples. He was echoing what Deputy Gardner had said, but I mean, that is what he said. Do you have other examples that you wish to give, Deputy?
No, sir. Health is a very complex affair. I'm working in a whole number of different areas to try and improve it, and I don't carry lists of particulars around with me, sir.
So that's an inadequate answer. I'd like you to take a ruling on that, please.
Well, the questions were entirely properly put. It's a matter for the Minister how he answers it. He answers it by saying the matter is too complicated to give specific examples. That's my understanding of the answer. It's an answer which falls well politically or it doesn't fall politically, but I'm not sure that I can require him to give examples if he's not in a position to do so. Very well, but you had your light on and I didn't see you, Deputy. Very well, I'll add you to the list in that case. And we have, I'll take a question, Deputy Jean, Miles and Deputy Moore, and then we'll have to bring this particular one to an end. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. And somebody who mainly follows what's happening in the health and trying to get answers from in the States Assembly. So I'm not in the scrutiny panel, so I don't hear particular briefings. I would like to understand from the Minister what cuts are being done to services we're talking about a recovery plan, but there's also recovery also means cuts. Could the Minister give an example of what cuts are being made to get to the recovery, especially the 8 million 2025 and the 9 million 2026?
So I can't specify any cuts because I'm not aware of any direct cuts. Every department is being asked to look at itself and to make as many clever decisions as they can to reduce their spending. And we're trying to look at reorganising the way things are done in a number of areas to improve efficiency, sir. So it isn't just simply a case of cutting this or cutting that. Every department is looking internally to cut as much as it can, sir. And once again, I don't carry a list of those individual things around with me.
Supplementary question, Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. So within these recovery plan, has the Minister done an assessment of the need of the healthcare system and also of now, but also the need of the healthcare system for the next 10 or 20 years? And does this sit alongside this recovery plan?
No, sir, I certainly haven't done anything to assess the need of the healthcare system. I'm working with a group of professional people who I think know what they need to be doing, and no, the simple answer is we haven't done that, and I, at this point in time, don't intend to.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. The Minister said in his initial answer that he intended to raise more funds for the health service. Does this mean that he's going to extend the privatisation of healthcare?
So this work begins formally in the early weeks of January, so we've not predetermined anything, sir.
Supplemental to that, sir?
Does the Minister intend tax rises?
I refer the Deputy to my earlier answer.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. The Minister referred to the future work that I believe is a similar question that Deputy Miles raised. Does this mean that the Minister has dropped the work that was underway under the former government that was looking at the funding model for the health sector?
Minister.
I have to say I'm not really aware of what the Deputy is referring to, sir. Other than the ongoing work that's been done by the same individual that's carrying on with the work now, sir.
So the answer is that you don't know what the model was and therefore can't answer whether it's dropped.
I can't be certain as to what the Deputy is referring to, sir.
Supplemental.
Yes, I would ask the Minister that he comes to the Assembly better prepared in future so that he can ask what are quite reasonable questions from the members of this Assembly. That is his job and part of his responsibility, sir. But I would also ask him to check to go back and ask his officers to inform him of the work that was well underway and progressed because it might assist him in his future work.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I think to say that I come here unprepared is laughable. The transformation that I'm currently undertaking, I think, exceeds anything that's been done in a generation. We're doing major transformation work on digital, which I think is going to help no end in terms of making the whole of healthcare connected. And we're making structural reforms to the entire health service to make it inclusive. And we're going to be giving a voice to third sector and primary care, which they haven't had before. There's a number of other initiatives going on in relation to rationalising the whole of the health estate. And if the former Chief Minister think that's unprepared, I'd like to know what being prepared is.
The actual part of the question, Minister, was whether you go back and ask officers to be briefed on what the previous work had been.
Sir, I've no reason to doubt that all of the work that was going on before is being continued and improved, sir.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister stated a couple of times words to the effect that when you start a year without enough money, you will end up with an overspend. I'd like to ask what kind of government deliberately underfunds its health service, which seems to be the implication, and isn't it the Minister's responsibility to secure funding at the start of the year, and can he say whether he has achieved enough funding for the current year so that he won't be back in a year's time saying we've deliberately not created enough money we've started the year without enough money?
So I'd like to remind the Deputy that I took office at the end of January last year. I had no hand at all in defining the budget, certainly not in the capacity as a health minister. I believe we've got hopefully enough money for this year, and we'll be monitoring it very, very carefully. It strikes me as that people's health is extremely important. And the health industry itself actually improves the level of care that it provides every year. And people take initiatives from here and actually increase our spending without any notice. We had somebody as recently as 2 weeks ago coming along and putting an extra 200,000 on the bill, and I've no doubt people will continue to do that in the year against a budget that's preset. All of those things are actually quite difficult to handle, sir. And like I say, I make no apology for saying that my priority is to make sure that the island is provided with a good health service, and if some problems arise as a result of that, I make no apology for it, sir. Everybody that's involved in health is doing everything they can to improve matters, sir.
Very well. We come to question 9 that Deputy Alves will ask the Minister for Social Security. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the introduction of whistleblowing legislation following the unanimous approval of P47 2023 as amended, which requested the Minister to bring forward the necessary legislation for approval by the Assembly prior to the end of December 2024. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. One of my priorities for 2024 was to deliver on Assembly decisions, and part of that was to get this important piece of work on whistleblowing legislation underway. This legislation could be quite a complex piece of legislation, and so I directed the Employment Forum to undertake a review and consultation exercise, which was completed in November. The Forum are currently considering and reporting and finalising their report, and I'm expecting that report in the coming weeks. That's an important report because it will inform how the legislation will be formed so that this legislation can be most effective. And I would like to confirm, as the Chief Minister confirmed in his recent letter to Scrutiny panel chairs, that the whistleblowing legislation does form part of the government's 2025 legislative plan.
Supplemental question, Deputy House.
Yes, please. Thank you, sir. When does the Minister envision that the legislation will be in place and ready to go in order to inform businesses? Thank you, sir.
I will be in a much better place to answer that question once I've received the report from the Employment Forum. I understand that there was a number of complexities and issues that were identified as part of that review. I will need to take time to consider the Employment Forum's recommendations so that we can see how complex law drafting instructions are likely to be. And I will endeavour to give the Deputy an improved time frame early in the new year once I have sight of that report.
Well, we come to question 10, that Deputy Coles will ask of the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the adoption of paragraph 8 of P87/2023 and the response to oral question 84/2024, will the Minister please advise what progress, if any, has been made with the review of the residential space standards?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And can I start by apologising to the Deputy and to the Assembly. I was embarrassed when I looked back to find that the last time I answered a question on the subject was the 30th of April, so certainly a number of months have transpired since then, and I have not made the progress I had intended, but I will, following today, instruct officers to go away and come back to me with work so I can give consideration to the space standards for one-bedroom, one-person units in response to the Assembly's support for Deputy Coles' Part A proposition. There will be a number of things to consider, sir, before we make any potential changes, but I will work to conclude the review as quickly as I can and report back to the Assembly at that time. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
No, sir, but I will thank the Deputy for his answer.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister, in asking for work to be conducted, also consider work from officers to look at the desirability and interest in the different housing stock, noting the perceived perhaps a glut of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments on the market and what's required for Jersey's long-term housing in that review?
Yes, so I would expect that to be part of the work. I think it's important to see what demand there is for certain types of tenure of homes, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, maybe 3, and family homes in particular, I know are in great demand, and it's right that we look at that too.
Supplementary. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. I want to know the Minister's view on increasing the minimum sized standards of a 1-bedroom and how this may impact prices of 1-bedrooms that are available on the market.
So I think my view is going to be informed by the work that's done, but I would say to the Assembly, to members, that in recent times the required standards have increased by up to 25%. So we have recently made some great strides in increasing these minimum space standards, but I'd also want to consider, and I could take Deputy Cole's view on board, you know, a one-person flat being the same size as a 2-person flat, but then how the 2 people feel about having a flat given to them that's exactly the same size as a single person. There's lots to consider there, and it will form part of their work, certainly as Deputy raises the issue of cost, and every time we raise standards, we increase building costs, we increase the difficulty of young families being able to afford property, maybe single people, just a couple. We have to bear that in mind as well. Affordability is really important. If people can't afford to buy property, it will stay empty.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. In terms of how professional evaluators will evaluate the property that they are looking at, can the Minister confirm whether increasing the minimum size standards of one-bedroom properties will see increases in market prices of one-bedrooms?
I would think that would be inevitable. So if we increase the size of a property, it will cost more to build, and the developer will need to realise return on his investment. So I would think it inevitable if we make the minimum standards larger, that would have to be reflected in the cost of building.
Thank you, sir. The Minister in his quarterly hearing last week and other moments when the panel and the Minister discussed the budget, he talked very much about the need to streamline work because of limited resources within his department due to the cuts that have had to be made ahead of the budget for 2025. The Minister has now indicated that this work will be put on the agenda. I was wondering if he could say if there's anything that he would have to push down the list to then have this work completed 2025.
So officers have furnished me with a great long list of work which I've completed, work which I have in train at the moment, and work still to do. But I think I'll say to the Deputy that I did commit to doing this work in April. And as I said at the outset, I'm a bit embarrassed that I haven't progressed that in any way, shape or form. One of the things I committed to doing was actually visiting these properties to see how they physically look to me, and how the difference between one person living in a certain size property will differ to two people. Obviously, in many areas you don't need more space, but in others you do. If you're two people, you've got twice the number of need for clothes storage and stuff like that, bike storage. So there's lots to consider, and I did commit to doing this work, and I can at the very least go and see these properties, see what they mean, and give an initial report back to the Assembly in short order.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure the Minister answered my question if there were anything on the other areas of his work that had to be deprioritised because of this work. Because we had not heard this being part of his work. I know committed in April, but since then in discussions we haven't heard from the Minister that this was on the list. So if it's on the list, that's fine, but if not, what will be deprioritised?
No, sir, it may not have been on the list. I don't particularly think it's a large piece of work. Certainly my visiting property to see what they actually look like doesn't involve any additional work for officers. And I would hope that those initial assessments by me personally would inform a short report which I can come back on. Certainly if I get to the conclusion that I'm not going to change the standards, I don't think there's very much of a report required.
Final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. This got raised with me by a member of the building with the construction industry at a recent planning meeting. Can the Minister acknowledge that further delays on this is causing more uncertainty within for our developers as well?
I'm not sure that it is, sir, but I only say that because none of them have raised it with me. But I'd go back to my original answer. I've committed, and I will make sure officers put me out there and get these visits done and make these initial assessments, so that if there is any uncertainty, that can be taken care of as soon as possible.
Come to question 11. The Deputy Renner will ask for the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the existing planning permits for developments that have not yet commenced, will the Minister advise whether he has any intention to use his powers under Section 26 of the Planning and Building Jersey Law 2002 to withdraw planning permission after a specified time period, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Sir, Article 26 of the law, termination of planning permission by reference to time limit, allows the Chief Officer or Planning Committee, but not me as Minister, to serve a notice stating that a planning permission shall cease to have effect upon expiry of a time period specified in the notice, with such a period not being less than 12 months from the date of serving the notice. The article applies only in instances where a planning permission was granted subject to a condition that states development shall commence within a specified period, the standard period currently applied being 3 years, and where development has commenced but not completed within the time period specified in the condition. Article 26, sir, of the law, therefore, does not apply to developments which have not yet commenced, and the article does not confer any powers on me as Minister to terminate planning permissions.
Supplemental question, then.
Yes, sir. The powers vested in the Chief Officer are, I'm sure, related to the direction given by ministers. Is the Minister aware that there are many circumstances where builders have begun developments in order to trigger planning permission and not then completed, and that it would be very, very helpful in terms of the supply of property in the island if those planning permissions were actually built out, and that the possibility of a withdrawal of planning permission might actually spur some of those developments to take place?
So certainly I am aware of a number of developments where planning permission has been approved and work has commenced and then stopped. And of course that's part of development, if you like. Certainly, as I said, I know a number of these sites. It's not helpful to have development started and then not completed, but in many cases it may be for many and various reasons, many of them very good. You know, interest rates, economic downturn, population demands on housing, the price of building. And I would need to be very careful about interfering in the market because withdrawing a planning permission when a development has commenced but not been completed.
Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has highlighted that there are reasons development start and don't commence, but nonetheless that leaves large amounts of properties extant on the books that are not being developed. And he's highlighted his concern about the quantum of applications approved yet not commenced. Does he not think in some circumstances that the use of Article 26 by the Chief Officer, or as it may be the Planning Committee, is a valid tool, and where developments were no longer viable, perhaps withdrawal of that permission is considerate, and applicants should apply for new permissions on those sites?
So, as I stated in my original answer, Article 26 does not apply to properties developments which have commenced. It's Article 27 is the one that we might use for that, and that refers to revocation and modification of planning permission. But I would state, sir, that unlike Article 26, Article 27 also has powers for giving money back where work has been incurred and expenditure is taken back. So there's certainly some compensation possibilities that could happen in those circumstances, and the numbers could be quite large, and we would need to consider that.
Thank you, sir. I think the Minister's misunderstood me. I was suggesting that one should do as Article 26 allows, serve notice no less than 12 months under paragraph 3, and therefore should planning not be completed within a suitable timeframe given to a developer, that such permission is then terminated. Article 26 gives no permission for compensation should the right terms be granted as described under paragraph 8. Does the Minister not think that ultimately serving these notices with reasonable timeframes to deliver the development would at least ensure that developments are completed, and if not, that developers and landowners could bring schemes compliant with today's island plan, which he may then be able to have a greater say on?
Lots of questions there, sir, and I think it will be clear to everybody in the Assembly that the subject is very complicated, very difficult, and what the Deputy suggests, while it might be possible, we could be asking people or forcing people to develop sites where they may find or found that they have paid over the odds for the site. The price of materials may have gone up, planning permission may have certain conditions which imposes additional cost which the developer hadn't anticipated. And as I said in the original answer, interfering in the market is something we should do very, very, very carefully. And I would want to tread with great caution before I started forcing people to doing things with a potential threat of losing a planning approval, which they'd gained in reasonable circumstances.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. The Minister's partly answered my question, but I will just reinforce it by saying, does the Minister agree with me that there is a real concern within the building industry of the viability of schemes? And does he need to perhaps share with members some of the real challenges that builders are facing so that we can actually solve some of the issues to get Jersey building and get the houses that people want? Does he share my concern about the economic situation that some members don't seem to be aware of?
Yes, sir, I do share the Deputy's concern. I'm sure we're all aware of a number of properties or sites around the island where development has commenced in the form of demolition, but we'd see no building happening. And that may be for a number of different reasons, but certainly if a site is purchased at a certain price with an anticipation of building at a particular rate, and that changes, developers do have to have the opportunity to stop and take stock of where we are, and something just as simple but vital as the interest rate could be the reason for that happening. So yes, I do share the Deputy's concerns. I'm not quite sure how one solves the issue. Certainly we have an island plan and we have building bylaws which convey to developers the quality, the standard and the standards that they must build to. There's a cost to doing that. Materials go increase in price with inflation, and all these things have to be borne in mind along with demand. And when the price gets expensive, demand drops off, and I know we will all be only too aware of the difficulties that young families, young couples, young people face in purchasing property at the moment.
Supplemental, Deputy Joseph?
Minister's answered very well, sir. Thank you.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Reynolds.
Thank the Minister for his answers. I want to focus on the particular circumstances which the Minister admits conceded do exist, namely where applications are started not with the intention of completing the building, but with the intention of triggering planning permission effectively in perpetuity and avoiding the 3-year rule on completion. And discretion is the point of Article 26. Can he not use that discretion to find those sites where the planning permission is being hoarded and make clear that this type of hoarding is not acceptable by instituting proceedings to cancel the permissions?
Well, I'm certainly happy to go away and look at the problem, sir, but defining hoarding or land banking is difficult, and as I said in previous answers, there may be any number of reasons why a development site may not be being built on at the moment, and one would need to be very, very careful indeed in stepping into the marketplace with new rules and regulations. But I take what the Deputy says on board. I'm certainly aware of sites where a very small amount of work has done enough work to officially be commenced, and in certain circumstances the development hasn't gone ahead when maybe it could have done, and so I will go away and consider that, sir. Thank you.
Very well, we come to question 12. The Deputy Jeune will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the good timekeeping today. So will the Minister explain the implications, if any, of the unanimous support for a vote of no confidence in senior management by ambulance staff who are members of Unite?
Thank you, sir. Unite, the union representatives, notified the Chief People Officer of the outcome of a vote of no confidence process in mid-July. It concerned 4 members of the ambulance senior leadership team. A series of meetings have been held since then to discuss the concerns and consequences of the process. The ambulance senior leadership team have acted to directly resolve some of the specific concerns raised, and associated programmes of work remain underway. In agreement with union representatives, a restorative practice approach has been agreed to allow all individuals in the service to participate in a facilitated programme of discussions to discuss and agree the way forward. This work has started and all staff are being encouraged to participate in face-to-face meetings with the facilitator next week, and then further group sessions in the new year. The staff of the ambulance service work hard every day to support us in times of need, and I continue to give them my full support.
Supplemental question, Deputy Chair.
Yes, and thank the Minister for her answer. What measures have been put in place to ensure there is actual implementation of a zero tolerance approach to attacks on ambulance staff?
So I'm not quite sure that this fits in with the question that's being asked by the Deputy.
Well, I think, Deputy, I'm going to ask you to explain why that's relevant to the parameters of the original question, because it's not obviously so to me.
Yes, so sorry. I believe that the unanimous, the vote of no confidence was also related to the concerns by the ambulance staff around the increase in violence and attacks that they have experienced, and asking my question originally about the implications and the changes, the restorative practice approach the Minister's talked about. I'm asking, along with those restorative practice approach, what measures have been taken specifically to put in place for implementing the zero tolerance approach, which would be part of that restorative practice approach. I see.
It clearly is that is a relevant question.
Yep.
If that is what
of course, sir. Basically, the Deputy will be aware that in recent weeks we have actually done a lot of media in relation to attacks on ambulance staff, and I would continue to encourage them to report any attacks on them that occur, and that they fully support the process. There is obviously ongoing work with the States of Jersey Police on how to appropriately deal with incidents of violence and aggression towards ambulance staff also.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister agree that this process was simplified, more inclusive and broad because the ambulance staff were members of a union and therefore their voices were able to be heard in one single point rather than multiple complaints over a period of time?
So I think that obviously there was a benefit that they had a union representative and that they could do it as a generic group. But for those people who do not belong to unions, sir, there is always a facility for people to be able to make a complaint and for that matter to be dealt with.
Supplementary question, Deputy. Well, Deputy Renniff.
Yes, so just in response to the Minister's reply to Deputy Jeune, could she outline what she thinks the issues are behind the dispute, and in particular the relative weights? What are the most important issues that she feels has to be resolved?
So there are a number of issues, and so I am concerned that we are straying into matters which are dealt by the people's team and SEB as opposed to myself as a minister. I'm concerned that these are personnel matters, not a matter for myself, and I don't really want to stray into that, sir.
Sure. Supplemental question, Deputy Renniff.
So I would have expected, I think, the Minister with responsibility for the ambulance staff to have some knowledge of what the issues are that staff have raised in a no confidence vote. And I wonder if she could reflect on that and perhaps give us some sense of what she thinks the issues are that the staff under her responsibility have raised.
So there are a number of issues. Obviously, one is the issue of radios, the matter of assaults on themselves, their support in relation to the police. There's obviously the additional response in relation to mental health matters. The list is endless, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain what kind of support arrangements are in place for staff at this time, given that there are particular industrial relations issues? And does she think that it would be helpful to bring some conciliation into the process to restore public confidence?
Minister.
So there is support for staff under the wellbeing system, and staff are being supported through this process. Obviously, as I've explained, the union representatives are involved in this process, and there are face-to-face meetings, and those are being facilitated this week and will be ongoing into the new year. And obviously that system, once that has been complete, there will be a clear sort of steer as to which way we go forward.
Supplemental, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we're just about to enter a period of festivities where perhaps the rate of incidents in terms of violence and aggression could potentially increase. Can the Minister give some assurance that the concerns of staff and the resources needed to support staff over this period is in place?
Minister.
Sir, I would like to reassure staff that there will be the support that's necessary during the Christmas period, and fully accept that they will be a lot busier. But I would also like to ask the public support on this, sir, because obviously they are a frontline service, and I think that the public as a whole should all support them. So anywhere where people can actually assist them, I would ask them to do so.
Deputy Tadier.
So is there a wider issue that the Minister has considered here about which laws are being used to prosecute staff when something goes wrong and somebody dies, a third-party member of the public, and whether that formed part of the grievance process that the staff ultimately had?
I don't think that can fall within this, Deputy, and the reason for saying is that the question was the implications of the vote of no confidence in the senior management. And I think straying into the area of how things are brought to book in a different area is simply too far outside the parameters.
Thanks, sir. I'll probably ask that in questions without notice.
That's an entirely different question. Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Chair.
Yes, sir. There was an independent review on Jersey's ambulance service that was published in 2022. Could the Minister advise if the findings of that review would still stand today, given that as she mentioned in her answer to Deputy Renouf, the list is endless on the concerns of why ambulance members brought the vote of no confidence, and what priority areas for improvement have actually advanced since 2022?
Sir, maybe the word I used as endless was probably not the best one. What I meant was that there was a number of issues, and maybe that makes it sound like it's too numerous, and I apologise to the ambulance if that was the way that it was reflected. But what I wanted to highlight was that there was a number of different things. I think it's the ambulance have had a review, and they've looked at all of their various opportunities, and I've forgotten the name of the actual review, sir, but they've reviewed the ambulance as a whole, and extra facilities and resourcing has been given to them. Obviously, that needs to be an ongoing thing as the ambulance continue to have a high workload. They are getting more and more calls, and so I think that is an ongoing process, sir.
Well, we come to question 13. Deputy Catherine Curtis will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether plans for the design of playgrounds are shared with the Minister for Children and Families and other interested parties, such as community groups, to allow for consultation, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for a question. So an underlying principle of my position is always to engage with colleagues and consult the community wherever possible. In respect of playgrounds, we currently have plans to replace the existing playgrounds at Millennium Town Park and the Springfield Stadium. Public and stakeholder consultation has been undertaken for both. The current design for the Millennium Town Park playground replacement has been shared with both the Minister and Assistant Minister for Children and Families. I understand both are due to attend the School Council Network meeting on the 15th of January next year, where final input from all in attendance will be sought before the design is finalised. The Springfield Playground replacement design has in fact been delayed following consultation and will be progressed further next year. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yeah, I thank the Minister for that answer, but would the Minister agree that the consultation process would be undermined if major changes are made to plans post-consultation?
So I'd expect the any major changes, if they were major, to go back up for further consultation. For example, in Springfield, the suggestion has been to relocate the playground, and I would expect that to go out to further consultation before a decision was made. Thank you.
Very well, we come to question 14. That Deputy Coles will ask the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'll start again. Will the Minister advise what plans, if any, he has to introduce independent regulation of further services once the regulation for the hospital and ambulance services has been implemented?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as the Deputy notes in his question, my primary focus in this area since taking office has been on ensuring that effective legislation is introduced to the Assembly to regulate hospital and ambulance services as soon as possible, and I'm pleased to report that that work is on course, and I would hope to lodge it in the very near future. There are a wide range of health and social care services that are still not regulated in Jersey. They include GPs, dentists, clinics, cosmetic procedures and adult social care. However, my next priority is to work with the Health Minister and the Care Commission to develop proposals for regulating cannabis prescribing, because I am concerned about the current practice in this area. Thank you, sir.
A supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. And first, I'd just like to thank the Minister because we had received a briefing on the ambulance and hospital regulation, and I think it's work that is very well done and is going to be very important. Has the Minister given any consideration to private sector mental health support, i.e. things like counselling? With the rise in mental health issues within the island, it is imperative that we ensure that people who are offering services are qualified for what they advertise.
Thank you, sir. I don't currently have plans to regulate counselling, private counselling services. Mental health services are provided by the Department of Health and Community Services, and those are included in my proposals for hospital regulation. And outpatients' children's mental health services are already regulated as they are provided by a registered healthcare professional. But I take the Deputy's question on board. There are a large number of other services we could look at, and I just need to be mindful every time that I don't overload both inspectors and the services which are being inspected.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I'm grateful for the Minister that he stated that we have GP, dentals, cosmetics and other services, private services that are not regulated. Would the Minister indicate which are from these areas he has major more concerns than others, and which one could be prioritised?
Well, as I said, sir, the prioritisation after the hospital and ambulance will be on the cannabis clinics, because the review, which was commissioned by the previous government and published in March, certainly highlighted to me that there are some issues with certain cannabis users getting prescriptions from multiple different outlets. And that is a great concern, because they may well be using more of this drug than the doctors expect them to be doing. But there are a number of other areas, as the deputies asked the question, that we could look at. But my main priorities at the moment are to conclude the hospital and the ambulance and then look at cannabis prescribing before deciding where to go next, sir.
Supplemental question.
Thank you. And grateful for the answer. I think that between the areas that I have mentioned in my previous questions, I know that we have ongoing connection with the GPs, and from previous experience, personally as a deputy, I have received more concerns and complaints around the dentist regulations and services and the provision. Is it anything Minister would consider at the meantime, because the dentist practices are required to get a bit close attention?
Yes, sir, I will consider that, and I have considered it already. GPs, as many will know, are regulated by the GMC in the UK, so they're registered, so that is helpful. But we need to always bear in mind, of course, that if we don't have our own regulation here, it may be that those institutions in the United Kingdom may look to us and say, oh, well, it's fine, us registering these doctors, but they're not working in an environment which is regulated. And I think that's a very important thing to bear in mind, because the relationship between doctors and their registered GMC and our relationship with the UK is really important, and we wouldn't at any point wish to put that in jeopardy. But I take the Deputy's views on board about dentists as well, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Brent.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to the Minister for clarifying that he will be bringing this forward in the new year. Is he able to provide any indication as to the further timetable that he is following to bring the inspection of the hospital and ambulance services into place? In other words, beyond lodging, hopefully early in the new year. Can he give any clarity about what the timetable is beyond that?
I can't give exact clarity, sir, but I know the drafting is all completed. We're just going through the final meetings to make sure we're all happy with it. I certainly still hope that I may be able to lodge that before Christmas, which will mean a debate early in the new year. And following that, I've certainly already held meetings with the Commission about how we start the regulation of the hospital ambulance service, and that work is in train, although I can certainly provide the Deputy with the detail of the timetable, but things will be happening next year for certain. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Is the Minister aware of anything that might blow him off course on this, or is he confident that he can get this through in the timetable he's hoping to pursue?
Not specifically, sir, although of course there will always be challenges to change, and it may well be that there's some concerns about the cost of regulation, but this has already been agreed, and the money needed to start the regulation of the hospital ambulance services has been approved by the Assembly moving forward, and there will always be some that will be concerned about the cost implications of the regulation itself. But I certainly feel, and I'm absolutely committed to bringing this forward. I think any money spent up front is money well spent, and money that can save us a great deal in the future. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And does the Minister consider good regulation a pathway to excellence, or just a hindrance to business?
I would certainly look upon it as a direction of travel heading towards excellence. There may well be work that needs to be done in certain parts of the hospital and ambulance service yet to be identified. I'm also certain we'll find that certain parts of it are in excellent order and operating very, very well. But that work is to be done, but I certainly don't regard it as a hindrance, and I think it's a very positive thing to do that can only benefit the public of the island for an even better health service than the one we currently have.
Very well, we come to the final question with notice. Question 15, the Deputy Gardener will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you. Will the Minister advise what plans are in place, if any, to conduct an independent review of the States of Jersey Development Company? And if there are no plans, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I believe this was a recommendation, as I suspect the Deputy also is aware, from a Controller and Auditor General review of SOJDC from June 2020. The appropriate political forum to scope and undertake such review is the Regeneration Steering Group, which has a political oversight over the activities of SOJDC. Successive iterations of the RSG and its evolution in the last government to the Future Places Group have not resolved to consider and pursue this matter, despite an original intention to consider this in 2021, as reported in the response to R56. This government's intention is to concentrate our term on output-focused delivery that brings more immediate and direct benefit to islanders, for example, creating a plan for town. It seems therefore unlikely that a strategic review will be prioritised over other work streams during this term of government. That's not to say that SOJDC lacks any kind of ongoing review, since it reports quarterly on its activities and developments to the RSG, and as shareholder representative, I also meet with the board quarterly. Our focus, and that of the SOJDC, is in advancing the plans for the South Hill and waterfront developments and SOJDC's preparatory work for Fort Regent. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Deputy Card.
Absolutely. And thank you. First of all, I would raise that the government has accepted, and the body that should conduct this review, actually not Regeneration Steering Group, because I'm looking at the executive response, it's the new states-owned entities and arm's length bodies oversight board. So I'm not sure how from the oversight board this responsibility was passed to Regeneration Steering Group in the minister's answer. Second, would the minister agree that before we continue to give project to SOJDC that was established for specific purposes, we need to review if it has met the objectives that was established for, and what else can be done?
Oh, I think there were 3 questions there, sir, and I probably can't remember 3 in my head at one time. The first question was, I believe that whatever was said in 2020, because I haven't read that response, the Regeneration Steering Group is now the body that has political oversight for SOJDC, and that group has not, since 2020, in its various forms, agreed, my understanding is, to conduct a review. Secondly, it hasn't done that. I think we do have to reflect that SOJDC has delivered some quite significant successes. It was set up to be the government's commercial developer with an emphasis on regeneration. In financial terms, they've grown the company assets by 152% to the end of last year, which is an annualised return of 12.6%. The College Gardens development provided 187 new homes, 40 of which were for assisted purchase, 40 for those over 55. The Horizon development has delivered 280 new homes, many of which were secured by first-time buyers using the SOJDC deposit scheme. The quality of the developments, such as College Gardens, as well as the IFC buildings, have each delivered significant public realm and infrastructure improvements. SOJDC is working hard to make further developments and further regeneration in St Helier, and as I say, the decision is with the Regeneration Steering Group and not with me. Thank you.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And I note that in the first answer to the first question, the Minister mentioned a strategic review. But of course, the question is about any independent review. But as the Minister is not actively pursuing an independent review of the SOJDC, is she satisfied that the SOJDC operate efficiently with all the necessary permissions and with robust governance over its operations?
I believe SOJDC does have robust governance, and I can't imagine, and clearly, you know, you have something. I'd be surprised if they did something without planning permission, deliberately. If there was anything they didn't do, it'd be oversight. But it appears to me, meeting them regularly, that they have very clear and very sound corporate governance. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Well, obviously, minor mistakes are acceptable, but if the SOJDC are found to not be competent at core development activities, such as by breaching planning law or by developing plans that do not comply with building regulations, would these be grounds for a review?
I'm not sure if that's a hypothetical question or if the Deputy has something in his mind. Clearly, if SOJDC were completely ignoring building regulations or planning, then that would have to be looked at, whether it needed a full independent review or whether it could be something that looked specifically at their failures in those specific areas, would be a question of fact at the specific time.
Constable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. The Controller and Auditor General recommended that the MOUs concerning all state-owned bodies be reviewed every 3 years. I think it's right to say that the review for the development company will come up for such review in May next year. Will the Minister confirm that that exercise will be carried out, and at the same time, when carrying it out, would she take particular note of the fact that the State Settlement Company is now the lead, is to take the lead in the development of Fort Regent, and as to whether that will necessitate the amendment in any major way?
Sir, I think I have confirmed several times now, both here and in scrutiny, that the MOUs are already under review. We are working on the reviews now. The SOJDC one does come up for, will meet its 3-year term in, I believe, May of next year, and that is something we will consider. I'm not sure whether the MOU currently sets out specific requirements regarding specific developments, but that is certainly something we could consider. But I think in terms of policy, the Regeneration Steering Group reviews the proposals that the SOJDC bring forward, and those are considered carefully by that group. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question? No, thanks. Final supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. As the Minister mentioned that now oversight of the State of Jersey Development Company are under Regeneration Steering Group, I would question what's the role Arm's Length Organisation Oversight Board is playing to oversee our Arm's Length Organisation in general and SOJDC in specific.
Sorry, sir, can I ask the Deputy to repeat the second? I missed a second. I didn't quite catch the second part of the question. Can you repeat
We do have, Minister, and we all know that we have a board that oversight arm's length organisation and state-owned entities, and Minister as a shareholder. Now we've learned that the oversight of State of Jersey Development Company moved to Regeneration Steering Group. So what role oversight arm's length organisation and states-owned bodies oversight board is playing for managing and oversight of the SOJDC and all other organisations?
So I think that's extending the question quite significantly. I think the Regeneration Steering Group have political oversight of SOJDC. I meet them as shareholder representative. The other ALOs and states-owned entities report through other ministers depending on the policy framework. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but maybe I didn't understand the question.
Very well. Well, that brings the question period to an end. And we move now to questions without notice to ministers. First period of questions is to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Returning to the youth justice strategy, the Minister said that she wasn't prepared to go ahead with the previous strategy because it wasn't achievable. Isn't it the case that the real problem with the previous strategy was that the government realised they weren't prepared to fund or execute the strategy, even though it was necessary, so the strategy had to be changed to meet their downgraded plans for delivery?
Minister.
Sir, no, that is not the case. The case is that having had stakeholder, the responsibility for the youth justice strategy now falls under the remit of the Building a Safer Community. Once that person was in role and a stakeholder review was done in May, it was quite clear that a number of elements of the strategy were not achievable. It was nothing to do with, at that stage, of course, the fact of any budget, because obviously we were working within the budget that had been provided by the previous government. So that is not the case, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Brown?
So if the strategy was not achievable with the existing resource, why was the decision not taken to achieve the resource in order to deliver the strategy on the basis that this is what was needed?
Sir, I never actually said resource. I said it wasn't achievable. I said the person had taken responsibility and the further work had been done with stakeholders. If you are going to put forward a strategy, there has to be a system in place, whether that's in the youth service or in the honorary police system or in the criminal justice system. If you are going to put a strategy in place in relation to youth justice, you have to have all your ducks in a row in order to achieve it.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister be able to give an update on the delivery, on what has been delivered under the Building a Safer Community? I believe it's been nearly a year now, so I'd like to get an update. Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, Building a Safer Community had done a number of work within schools. As a result of that, a number of schools have come forward and requested inputs in relation to the works done by Building a Safer Community, and that will start in September. Oh, sorry, that will be ongoing in 2025.
Supplementary question.
Yes, I believe Building a Safer Community is much bigger than just focusing on schools. It is about prevention and about building a safer community. Would the Minister be able to expand on what the delivery framework and what that has actually been happening and what activities have happened in the last, since it was launched nearly a year ago, beyond schools?
Yes, sir. The coordinator for Building a Safer Community has been doing work within the prison and as obviously has been doing a lot of work in relation to the youth justice. The coordinator also delivered a antisocial behaviour presentation with the community of St Brolads, as to which all of the deputies attended.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what challenges the ambulance service are facing in regard to the siting of the hospital at Overdale, and what engagement has she had with the ambulance service staff? Thank you,
sir. As we all know, there will or potentially could be challenges in relation to the location of the hospital at Overdale. I have had regular meetings both with the Health Minister and also with the ambulance service in relation to these matters. And at this stage, the ambulance are comfortable with the position, and it will be ongoing as to see how that develops, sir. Obviously, there will be less journeys to Overdale as it will be for acute only. It'll be a different remit to what it was originally.
Supplemental question, Deputy A.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister received the views of the patient transport service in determining if they have any concerns in regard to the same? Thank you.
So, not explicitly in relation to the patient transport service. Obviously, the issues with the road to go to Overdale is about probably more of an emergency facility as opposed to one that is with a slow-moving vehicle, as, for example, if the bus was going up there. So the issues raised previously by the ambulance service in relation to Overdale was about emergency responses, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. So when it comes, I know that the Minister isn't responsible for the courts, but she is the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. When it comes to some tragic incidents that might or have occurred in Jersey, does she share concerns about whether the right people are being prosecuted for the said offences and whether the right laws are being used to prosecute those individuals?
Sir, I think the Deputy refers to the fact that we do not currently have a corporate manslaughter law. And obviously the Deputy for Social Security, the Minister for Social Security will be looking at potentially the legislation in relation to health and safety. And I fully see where the Deputy is coming from. The only thing is, at this current time, due to the legislative programme that I have, it's not one that I have a facility to look at.
Yes, sir. So whilst there is no statutory corporate manslaughter law, there is legal opinion that it would be possible to prosecute for corporate manslaughter even under common law in Jersey. But more specifically, could I ask the question about, in this whole area, to make sure that there aren't potential miscarriages of justice, When it comes to, for example, a boat which hits some third party and kills that third party, how do we know that the right individuals are being prosecuted when it comes to a big company which ultimately has a captain of that vessel? Can she assure us that the right bodies, whether it's an individual or indeed a corporation, can be held accountable for that kind of incident under Jersey law?
I think so that is probably the bounds, although I have responsibility for justice, and I fully see where the Deputy is coming from in relation to this question. I would make an assumption, sir, that the LOD, as in the Legal Officers Department, would obviously look at what the legislation availability was for particular circumstances and therefore look at the possibilities and how that could be prosecuted in those circumstances. I think, sir, it is certainly, I think, necessary for us to probably have a look at exactly what legislation we have got and whether there is any reforms that we could make in relation to it.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. In regard to the youth justice strategy, could the Minister tell us how the Child First principles have been incorporated? Minister.
In relation to the Child First matter, it is always important to put the child first in any process. And it is about actually looking after children and ensuring that they are given every opportunity in life to fully develop. This is why it is important that when we develop a strategy, that we look at all of the opportunities and we make sure that if any children come within our care or are in the care of their own parents, that they are given all of the opportunities of full education. And so from that aspect, I think we need to make sure that we look at all of the options in relation to how we develop children, how they're being supported in the community, and how they are being helped to prevent them ending up in the criminal justice system.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Given those answers, what are the Minister's views on increasing the age of criminal responsibility?
Sir, I'm fully aware that under the United Nations in relation to children, that is what they would all like us to do. I think it's important that we look at that particular area and whether we are able to increase the age of responsibility. I think when we're doing that, I think we need to ensure that we've got all the necessary support and backup to be able to achieve that aim in a realistic manner. We've had a briefing from the Children's Commissioner in the last week, and I fully support her in her visions. And I would support increasing the age of responsibility if we have the right policies and procedures in place to be able to support children moving forward.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. My question is, I looked at the dates and I would like to have clarification from the Minister. Minister stated that the youth justice strategy has been changed follow the building a safer community framework. From my recollection, these two pieces of work were developed in parallel at the same time, and Building Safer Community has been launched in March, actually 21st of March. What happened between March and May that actually strategy changed? What new evidence came into Minister's attention after launching established framework Building Safer Community?
Minister. So I actually can't find my timeline at the present time. However, my answer to the Deputy's question would be this. I was asked questions about why we hadn't straight away developed or implemented the strategy that had been completed by the previous government. The previous government, or I took over on the 30th of January. The Building a Safer Community coordinator started to look at the work in relation to it. And there is a timeline starting, sir, in 2019, but I don't want to waste the Assembly's time in looking for that timeline. And it goes through all the way through, and the previous government said that it was ready to go. As I said, the coordinator was brought in January, and the work then commenced in relation to putting the strategy for building a safer community, and a lot of work was done in relation to that. There was then the review in relation to the youth justice strategy, and further inputs from stakeholders during May, and thereafter again in July, and then the rewriting of the strategy in October and November.
Supplemental question?
Absolutely. It sounds a bit complicated, even though that now I understand that building a safer community has been finalised by March. Now, would the Minister confirm or deny that actually decreasing age of the criminal justice was the change in the strategy that she is bringing forward?
No, sir.
Well, Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I should just, first of all, caveat this question by saying that in a previous declaration of interest, I was involved in a matter which I'm going to refer to, but I'm no longer involved in it. It was a charitable donation, so there's no financial or pecuniary interest. So is the Minister aware of the Migration Advisory Committee and their recommendations that the UK food industry, that's all bits of it, retail, hospitality, farming, etc., should adopt the employer pays principle, which would require employers to bear recruitment costs and relocation costs, including expenses such as flights and visas, to prevent migrant workers from falling into debt bondage, as a direct quote. Is the Minister aware of that? I'm not imagining she might be, but would she please take account of that when she is reviewing the very difficult issues of work permits in Jersey?
Minister.
So I'm not exactly aware of what he's actually saying, but what I will say to the Deputy is that we've we are in the process or have reissued the work permit policy, and the work will continue to be ongoing because it's something that will need to be continually updated. I have full intention in January to travel to the UK in order to facilitate meetings with various individuals, and I have also had some input from a local charity, and I will be doing some further work in relation to the work permit policy and the issues that may arise in relation to what the Deputy talks about.
That brings the period of questions available to this Minister to an end. The next period of questions is for the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Renouf.
I thought I'd delayed long enough for somebody else. So social security funds have been diverted to pay for the living wage transition and have been invested in a new building as a result of the budget. Can she state whether there are other plans to use the social security funds in any other way to pursue wider government objectives, whether that is by borrowing against them or using the funds directly, for example, but not limited to funding infrastructure or health?
Minister.
Firstly, the purchase of the new government building, as was stated in the actual debate on that, was an investment made by the Social Security Reserve Fund. It is entirely normal practice for the Social Security Reserve Fund to make such investments, and it was seen as a prudent and just investment by all of the investment specialists and advisors that advise on that. It was not misdirection or a redirection of social security funds. In relation to the money and the change that we made to the legislation to change just for 2 years the state's grant that will go into the Social Security Fund, again, that is not money that was in the Social Security Fund. It is not funding from the Social Security Fund. It is taxpayers' funding that was redirected from the Consolidated Fund.
Supplemental question?
So that has not remotely answered my question. I did actually say it has been invested in a new building. She's given a long explanation for why, the Minister has given a long explanation for why it had been invested. I actually said that it had been invested. I asked whether there are any plans in the future to divert further funds or invest further funds.
That was the thrust of the question, Minister, so I'll take that as the first question.
It is the purpose of the Social Security Fund to make investments. So, of course, the Social Security Reserve Fund will continue to make investments in order to continue to grow the fund and pay out pensions and working age benefits into the future. I have been quite clear that the change to the legislation in relation to the state's grant is a 2-year change, and it will come to the end 2 years. So there are no current plans to change the formula for the state's grant in any future years.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. I still would like clarification on whether the funds could be used in the future to invest in other assets which might be part of a wider objectives of the government. For example, as I said in my original question, funding infrastructure or health.
So all investments are made in line with the investment strategy, which is under the remit of the Treasury Minister in agreement with the Social Security Minister. It's important that all investments are made in line with an agreed investment strategy that is laid before the States Assembly. That particular investment was in line with the investment strategy, and any future investments will continue to be.
So could I just ask for clarification, are there any plans? She's stated policies, but she has not stated whether there are any plans.
Well, I was assuming from that answer that there are no current plans, but that there might be in the future. But if I'm wrong about that, Minister, will you please correct that?
So you are correct. All investments will be made at the time, and they will be the right investments to make for the fund at that time.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise, in the midst of the cost of living crisis and all of the support that's been provided to islanders to help them cope with the crisis, whether she has seen any increase in benefit fraud as a consequence of the additional payments being made available?
So I've not been made aware of any increased incidence of benefit fraud as a result of funding being made available. If the Deputy has concerns about benefit fraud, then I would encourage her to come and speak with me and my department.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister tell us what data she just holds on any incidents of fraud and whether or not this information is public and the information is available for us to review? And what metrics does the Minister use to actually measure the effectiveness of the fraud detection and prevention strategies in place?
So, of course, cases of benefit fraud do go through the courts, so reporting is public on those cases. I am informed on a case-to-case basis when cases are going to court. I have no specific metrics that are reported to me on a regular basis because these cases are very infrequent and a very, very small proportion of people that claim benefits are claiming them fraudulently. If the Deputy can suggest any metrics that she thinks that we should be collecting, I'd be happy to hear that. And of course, I will be taking interest in the recommendations that have been made recently by the Comptroller and Auditor General in her Handling Fraud and Error report that was recently published.
Very much. Deputy Doublet.
Thank you, sir. Please could the Minister give an update on the free period products scheme and specifically the reusable eco-friendly products that were being offered?
Since the scheme was launched, over 85,000 packs of free period products have been distributed. I am pleased to say that we are now offering reusable products from 4 locations, and my understanding is that the uptake of those reusable products has been incredibly positive. I'm pleased to see that. Not only is it more environmentally friendly, it's also good value for money as products can be reused. We are in the process of transitioning from a project to a business as usual and rolling out the continuation. I'm pleased to say that the free products are available now in more public supermarkets as well, and we have resolved a number of the issues in the public toilets. So I am pleased that we now have a successful project on our hands, and we will continue to deliver it in future years.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister consider to continue expanding the scheme, for example, offering the reusable products in all schools, or perhaps through a voucher service whereby islanders could access them at any shop, not just those 4 locations?
I would be open to expanding the types and locations of reusable period products. This was a new offering that we put forward in the last few months, and part of what we are doing as we're rolling that out is we have asked those locations to collect data and information from people that are receiving those products so that we can improve that process into the future.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Given the earlier questions and the recent debates about the use of the Social Security Fund for purposes beyond its original mandate, whilst I accept, of course, the vote of the Assembly, there is an absence in the legislation of a prohibition in the Social Security Jersey Law 1974 against any uses which are not fundamental to the purposes of pensions and allowances. Would you consider introducing legal specific safeguards, and would you also take notice and perhaps implement in Jersey equivalents like the Canada Investment Fund, the Norwegian Pension Fund, which demonstrates really best practice in terms of independent governance that doesn't allow politicians to use funds from time to time if they wish? We could have an opportunity to do that. Does the Minister agree?
I think we do have adequate safeguards in place, and I'm not minded to look at adding any additional ones at the moment. But just to reiterate, the funds that were used for the living wage package were not funds from the Social Security Fund.
Supplemental question, Deputy Joseph.
I will take that offline, sir, because it's one is dealing with one fund. I'm not going to confuse the Assembly, and I think that I'm well aware of this. But I think it's the spirit of the thing. Would the minister, is the minister actually saying that she does not believe that there is any need and there is any concern amongst the public about the use of the Social Security Fund, and that would it not be better to put in place a specific prohibition and to put further strengthening in place to protect the pensions and benefits for the future? Does she not agree at all there's a case to be made for that, and she, rather than dismissing it?
So no, I don't agree, and I do think that if members of the public are concerned, they are probably concerned about the misinformation that is simply not true.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister consider that it is reasonable or within policy for a person who has recently received a terminal cancer diagnosis to wait 7 weeks prior to receiving any benefits?
Sir, I am always concerned about the length of time processes take, and I am always concerned if people are having to wait to receive their benefits. If the Deputy is aware of a case that she is particularly concerned about, I would like to hear about that case so that I can see how any matters can be resolved.
Supplemental question. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I will indeed. I'm grateful to the Deputy for her answer, and I will indeed share the information that I have. However, this information that I've come about via Facebook appears from the comments to not be an uncommon situation, sadly. And therefore, would the Minister consider reviewing any policy around the time limits for supporting members of our community in such circumstances?
Sir, I am in the middle of a review of income support guidelines. I am meeting with the relevant staff on a fortnightly basis. My take since being Minister is to our staff in the department that if something feels morally wrong, I want to know about it. I want things to be resolved. I have also been very, very clear to my department that if people are asking questions on Facebook rather than coming to the department, we have a problem that we need to resolve. I want people to be coming to the department or coming to me with their issues so that we can resolve them in a very timely and efficient manner.
Are there any other questions for this Minister? Deputy Reniff.
Yes, sir. Under the health restructuring plans that the Health Minister announced, the responsibility for the HIF is proposed to go to the... I do beg your pardon. Responsibility for the HIF is due to go to the Health Minister. Can she clarify whether, given the extra demands on the HIF as a result of recent decisions and the impending shortfall in funding by the 2030s, whether she plans to bring forward a revamp of funding or a reassessment of the HIF funding, or will she be leaving that to the Health Minister?
I have no current plans to do a reassessment of the HIF funding. HIF funding is safeguarded for primary care, the use of primary care and things like funding our GP consultations and prescriptions and things like that. What's most important about the work being done undertaken by this government in relation to health is that we end up with the most fit-for-purpose health service on the island. And if that then leads to a change in ministerial responsibilities, and that's the right thing to do, then I'm fully supportive of that.
Supplemental or different?
So that again was not what I was asking. I was trying to get at the point that the HIF, as described, for example, by the Fiscal Policy Panel, said by the early 2030s it would be running out of money. So the question is about the funding of the HIF. Who is going to look at ensuring that there is enough money in the HIF going forward?
The HIF is part of our very vital health funding infrastructure. The plans going forward are to take a look as a whole at what we need as an island across our health environment. And I think it's important that any future changes or any future policy around the HIF is done within that context, within that whole of government look at what we require from health services across the island.
Are you able to say, is there a specific minister, you or another minister, who will have primary responsibility for that? Because I think that was the question. I think that's how the question was directed.
So I think ultimately that will be the decision of the Assembly when any future propositions and proposals are brought forward by the government. But at the moment there are no plans by myself within my ministerial plan or departmental plan to look at HIF funding specifically.
There might be a possibility for a very quick question, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Since assuming office, has the Minister attended any meetings or received any briefings with regard to the sustainable healthcare funding model?
I meet regularly with the Health Minister and his team, and we work together in partnership, acknowledging the fact that some of my responsibilities are very much aligned to what the Health Minister needs to deliver. So yes, I have received briefings on sustainable healthcare funding models.
That brings an end the time available for questions to this Minister. The next period is for the Chief Minister. Deputy Reniff.
Thank you, sir. Recently, the Chief Minister announced a 3-year funding package of at least £4.5 million from the Jersey Reclaim Fund relating to dormant bank accounts. Given that law specifically requires that a funding decision must be made each year for that year only, does the Chief Minister accept that his press release was effectively ultra-virus?
So that's not the advice we received, so shall I say we didn't receive any advice to the contrary, so the decision was made ultimately by Deputy Gorse, responsible for that area. So the decision was made to give the Jersey Community Foundation and the organisations they support some certainty into the future. Very difficult for charities and those providing valuable services to the community to plan when they don't have any confirmation of slightly longer term funding. So I'm sure we can look into the virus of that, but I thought I'd provide an explanation as to why that was done, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wren.
Yes, Article 2 of the Dormant Bank Accounts Distribution of Fund Money, Jersey Order 2020, says the Minister must decide each year whether a distribution should be made from the fund, and it goes on to clarify why that would be the case. So can the Minister, how does the Minister intend to ensure he delivers on his promise, both legally and politically, to charitable and voluntary organisations, since it seems to be that he's acted beyond the scope of the law?
Thank you, sir. Well, I would counter that, sir, to say it wasn't as such an announcement that money had been done and transferred or was going to be transferred, sir. It was an announcement, and the Deputy can correct me if I'm wrong, so it was an announcement that the intention was to provide that funding over the next 3-year period to provide some certainty. In practice, I think that will be a decision each year, adding up to the 4.5 million that was agreed. So happy to make sure we do that in line with the legislation.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Chief Minister tell us what process was followed to determine that the role of Chief Executive Officer was worthy of a 26,000, i.e. a 10% pay rise?
Thank you, sir. The salary of the Chief Executive Officer had been set at £250,000 per annum since 2018. There'd been no increase in the Chief Executive salary since then, sir. So it was deemed reasonable and appropriate to review that, sir, and reset it at the higher level of 276,000, sir. That's not quite cost of living over that period of time, but it was a negotiation with the incumbent. Thank you.
Yes,
So I did ask the Chief Minister what process was followed.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So the process in deciding what the new wage would be, that was down to of the salary and a negotiation with the incumbent. I'm not sure outside what other process the Deputy could be referring to.
Thank you, sir. I'll
I think that is the answer.
rephrase the question. Who made the final decision to grant the pay rise?
That would ultimately be the State's Employment Board, sir.
Very well. Deputy Gardner.
Would the Chief Minister agree with me that the answers to the question today, especially from the Health Minister, was lacking details and deep knowledge?
I wasn't in the Assembly when the Minister answered the question, sir, but so I can't comment, sir. My experience of questions, sir, answered by ministers is generally good. Ministers respond with the information they have to hand, and if they don't, they often offer to provide further detail at a later date, sir. Thank you.
Would the Chief Minister encourage ministers to read the reports and preparations to answer submitted oral questions?
I don't think I need to encourage ministers. I know ministers do as much work as they can to prepare for oral questions and written questions, sir. But there's always room for improvement with all of us. Often I find myself not able to answer a question at this table, and if that happens, I'm sure all ministers will endeavour to come back to members as quickly as possible with the appropriate answers, sir.
Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Reniff.
Yes, sir. In relation to freedom of information legislation, can the Chief Minister state whether he gives full support to that legislation? And in particular, is he prepared to urge ministers to answer freedom of information requests in a quick, timely and fulsome manner as intended by the legislation?
Well, sir, ministers don't answer freedom of information requests that go through the freedom of information teams. Ministers are not involved in that process.
Supplementary question?
Yes, sir. Ministers do have to sign off responses given under the freedom of information, or at least certainly I was shown redactions and so on that had to be made, and they were clarified with me. It is in that regard that I'm asking the question.
So that is not the case. Ministers are often copied in to freedom of information replies that involve themselves, sir, and that is the extent of the involvement. Thank you.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chief Minister explain to the Assembly what plans, if any, for the use of the craft leg that was purchased by the states and passed to Jersey Heritage, what benefits public can see in the coming year?
Thank you, sir. Well, that is work being undertaken by the National Trust. We've already seen some basic work, opening of the car park and some catering facilities, temporary basis, which have meant islanders have been able to enjoy those facilities throughout this year, sir. I'm expecting an update from the National Trust early in 2025, sir, and I'll share that with members, although I'm sure the National Trust will be making that very public, sir, given the amount of public consultation that has taken part.
Okay, thank you, Chief Minister, for the answer. I think that it's spending more than 3 million on the car park, it would be very expensive, so I would like to see what directions were given from the government to the National Trust, what public of Jersey would like to see and why we spent the public money to purchase this type.
Thank you, sir. That was in the proposition that the Assembly approved earlier this year. The property and land was bought by the taxpayer and gifted to the National Trust with conditions that it's utilised for public use, and that's what they're doing. I haven't had an update from the National Trust. I understand one is due, so a lot of public consultation has taken place. They want to ensure what they do with the premises is aligned with public thought and support, sir. So I will chase up the National Trust and ask for an update.
Wall.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister be supporting the Constable of St Helier in his request for a meanwhile use at Gas Place?
I'm not sure of the detail of the request. I have no problem with utilising any space as best we can, sir, while there's a transition going on. I fully support the ultimate use of the place, and that is for a new school. But if there is an opportunity to utilise the place, well, the plans for that is taking place, and I don't have an objection. But again, I need to understand what the request is. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy? No. Are there any other questions for the Chief Minister? There are no other questions. Then I close questions, and we now move on to the next item of business. The next members will see there has been a slight revision to the order paper, and the next item is a statement to be made by the Chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, and I call upon the Chair to make that statement.
Thank you, sir, and I hope members will bear with me because I'm on the verge of losing my voice, so I shall do my best. So I wish to make a statement about the publication of my panel's review into the prescription of medication for ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And the panel initially became aware of issues around ADHD prescriptions via a series of investigative reports in the Bailiwick Express, and also approaches from constituents in the early months of this year. The panel monitored this area, and questioning at a quarterly hearing revealed that due to Jersey's prescribing regulations and the way that medicines are funded, the prescribing of ADHD medication can only be carried out by a specialist consultant psychiatrist. The panel noted that this was contrary to other jurisdictions where initial assessments
and treatment are initiated by a specialist. And following that, GPs can prescribe routine treatment. During that hearing, the panel was advised by the Director of Mental Health and Adult Social Care that Jersey's hospital had only one specialist in this area, with a caseload at that time of 220 adults. The panel formally launched its review into the prescription of medication for ADHD on the 9th of July 2024. We learnt that a global shortage of ADHD medication meant that health and community services had to limit medication, resulting in patients being given only 1 month's supply of medication at a time, as opposed to the usual 3 months. Some patients were reporting that they were constantly worried that the community or hospital pharmacy would run out of their designated medication and they would be left without. The impact of these global shortages, combined with the prescribing regulations, meant that our on-island psychiatrist was spending an extraordinary amount of time just issuing repeat prescriptions. My panel questioned the Minister for Health and Social Services to find out if additional staff could be recruited to alleviate the pressure on the current service. We were informed that recruitment for specialists in these areas had been pursued. However, it was extremely difficult to recruit in these areas, both in Jersey and the United Kingdom. My panel was made aware that a nurse had been seconded to undertake some work on the waiting list, which was hoped could alleviate some pressure. The waiting list from referral to diagnosis is currently 3.5 years, and at the time of drafting this report, there were 736 adults in Jersey on the list waiting for an ADHD assessment. The panel received a number of written submissions from members of the public, with the long waiting list being the area most commented on, as well as the lack of communication and support from health and community services once on the assessment waiting list. The wait for an assessment was having a significant negative impact, with a number of people stating they felt they had little choice other than to seek private treatment at their own expense. The panel was informed that the financial impact of having to seek private medical assistance is considerable. A consultation to be assessed privately could be as much as £2,000, and some islanders told us that with repeat prescriptions and follow-up appointments, this could cost around £5,000 a year. The panel also learned that medication for ADHD was not subsidised by the Health Insurance Fund, the HIF, as the medication did not form part of the approved prescribed list of medication. And should it be included, it would cost an additional £800,000 per year, which would need to be made available from the HIF. My panel understands that a shared care pathway is under discussion with both the Minister for Health and Social Services and also the Minister for Social Security. The shared care pathway would allow these initial assessments to be carried out in the hospital, and then once a plan had been established, a patient would see their GP for maintenance of this treatment, including the repeat prescriptions. The panel understands that these discussions are ongoing. We will continue to monitor this during our work in 2005. There are 3 key recommendations I would like to draw members' attention to, and they're numbers 1, 3 and 6. And my panel strongly urges the ministers to consider these alongside our other recommendations. The key recommendations concern the implementation of a support hub for ADHD patients with specially trained staff in place to offer advice. Secondly, providing a clear communication plan for those on the waiting list, and the urgent continuation of discussions, finally, with primary care providers regarding the development of an alternative prescribing pathway that will help alleviate the pressure on the current crisis being faced. Before I take questions from members, I'd like to thank my panel members and officers for their hard work on this review, and also to the ministers and their teams for engaging with us, and to the organisations in our island and all of the individuals who took the time to either write into us, to call into the officers, and some who came in to speak to the panel in person and gave some very moving testimonies. I will now take questions on the report from members, sir.
Members will know that there is a period of 15 minutes that's available for posing questions. Does anyone wish to ask a question? If no one wishes to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
Can I don't have a feeling of the room, sir, but can I just offer my thanks to the panel for their recommendations. I've not said this in the State, sir, before, sir, but I'm one of those people I have not engaged with the panel. Does the scrutiny chair, does Deputy Doublet agree that there is an issue with ADHD in her findings, in that it can be regarded as a negative? There can be discrimination against people with ADHD, but there's also some massive positives. And does she agree that her report can be used to really celebrate not only the solutions to the difficulties that people have with ADHD, of which I have had, but also to celebrate the remarkable things that people with ADHD can do? And ADHD isn't a life sentence.
I thank the member for his question, and indeed one of the organisations that engaged with us and came in to speak to the panel was ADHD Jersey, and they described to us how ADHD is not a mental illness, it is a neurotype and a different way of thinking, and they explained how many of the members of their organisation had been misdiagnosed in the past, and it had been viewed as a negative thing. But in my foreword, sir, I did draw out some of the positive aspects and the amazing benefits that those with ADHD brains can bring to schools, homes and workplaces, because as the member noted in his question, there are many benefits to thinking differently. For example, the ability to hyper-focus for hours, exceptional problem-solving skills, a creative approach, ability to see the big picture, a source of unique ideas, and something that really struck me from the submissions of the islanders that wrote into us and came to see us was the resilience of those who are part of this community. And indeed, Sarah, is a large community. The waiting list and those who have already been diagnosed is well over 1,000 individuals on our island, and those numbers will rise as we understand more about this condition and about other neurodiversities. And one of the recommendations that the panel has made is that the Minister should raise awareness of this condition, and I believe ADHD Awareness Month is in the autumn, so I'm hoping that the Minister will also accept that recommendation and that we would see a programme of awareness raising and education which should include celebrating this condition.
Supplemental question, Deputy Joseph.
I'll leave the floor for other members to ask. I have some other questions, but I'll leave the questions to others.
Does any other member have any questions? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask a question on this? I think I can. It's not against it. So recommendation 1 is about the training programme for nurses to provide authorisation to issue repeat prescriptions for ADHD medication. Can I ask the chair of the panel whether there are any concerns over the continuation of repeat prescriptions? Because I know that is an issue for some. I'm thinking of other types of drugs, perhaps. Particularly because diagnosis of any spectral disorder, or spectral, not disorder, that's completely the wrong word, spectral condition, I was going to say experience actually, which is probably a better word, if not treated well at the beginning, could impact long term on its actual the effectiveness of any medication.
Can I just ask the Deputy to clarify?
Sorry, does the panel see any problems with that can be compounded, is the word I was searching for in the back of my head, by having the repeat prescriptions that weren't originally diagnosed to be prescribed being repeated by nurses and those trained simply to prescribe medicines?
I think I understand the question, and this would be something that the Minister should address with any shared care pathway or any alternative prescribing procedures. And the drugs that are often used to treat ADHD, it does require the patient to be reviewed intermittently, and my understanding of it is that in a shared care pathway, if the GP or the nurse had any concerns around that medication being appropriate for that patient, they would then refer back to the psychiatrist.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. And subsequently, it's not just there's not just drug treatments for any experience of life, but could this be simplify and increase? We've had so many situations, sir, in society where drugs have become so prevalent in treating conditions that we recognise. Is there not a risk that the more that we can prescribe, the easier we make it, could make the problem compounded in the long term, that is the only response to a condition?
Yeah, and what the panel learnt from the organisations that spoke to us was that not every individual who's diagnosed with ADHD is treatable with medication or wants to be treated with medication, and that we have an appendix in the report which looks at social prescribing. Now, it wasn't strictly within the terms of reference, which is why it's in the appendix, and members will have noted that, not as the panel chair, but as a backbencher, I amended the government plan to fund the Connect Me projects. And it's my personal hope, and I think shared by the panel, that social prescribing will continue to provide alternative treatments to individuals who are diagnosed with ADHD, that medication is not always the solution. But what I have also learned from doing this review is that there are individuals who have been diagnosed with this condition and being prescribed medication, and for them it has been absolutely life-changing, and they require that medication to function. And some of the contrast that was explained to us through the submissions and the meetings that we had between what their lives were like before, when they weren't medicated, and it was almost, for some, an overnight improvement. So I think that the impact of medication for some cannot be underestimated, but yes, it's not magic for everybody. There is not one solution for every individual.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I think my question has mostly been answered, but I'll just double check anyway. As been mentioned, that medication isn't suitable for everybody, and especially with some of the side effects that come with certain ADHD medication and its effect on organs like the heart, for example, means that there is a scope of people who might never be able to be medicated. Did the panel investigate further over sort of more therapeutic stuff like counselling services, and whether they formed any opinion about the necessary qualifications that counsellors should have in treating people?
That's a really interesting question, and we didn't look at qualifications of counsellors, but I do believe that's something that we could follow up on, and we will be keeping this report live and following up on it. One of the things that is really needed by this community and was raised quite a lot is somewhere that people can go to where there might be counsellors and health professionals available to like an ADHD hub, and indeed that's one of our key recommendations, that there should be a hub or a clinic of that sort, and that would be the ideal place for health practitioners that the Deputy mentions to be based. But I will take that point and include that in our follow-up questions.
Supplemental question.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think it's a good time to obviously to mention that ADHD Jersey does exist, and there are a charity that does work very well with people with ADHD. But it is something that has become more apparent to me in recent weeks, that there are a lot of people on Ireland offering services similar to counselling but aren't actually qualified. And actually there's an area where more defined experience and training to ensure that you're managing people with appropriately is important. So I would just like it, if that panel is going to stay active, that if at a future review that those kind of therapies are included within their scope.
I note the point the Deputy is making about qualifications, and I agree that qualifications are important. Something I did note during the course of the review was also that peer support is something that could be very powerful in this area. And indeed, even some of these submissions and the visits that we had, there were individuals who were perhaps a bit older and had been living with the condition for a long time and had found ways to live with it, whether that be medication or workplace accommodations, etc. etc. And then we saw younger individuals who had perhaps very similar traits. And something that I really would have liked to do is link those two people up. And we weren't able to do that as a scrutiny panel, but I believe that is something that the ADHD Jersey, there's also All Matters Neurodiverse is another excellent organisation, and there are others. And they do want to do this work in providing peer support. And I urge the Minister to support those organisations, the ministers, and wherever they can, because there's so much potential for the community to support itself here, and not just medication, but peer support, community building, therapies and courses as well offered by those groups.
Thank you, Sam. Please, just to pick up on that final point, of course, diagnosis and getting the waiting list down and freeing people to understand the condition that they've got, and medication will hit the headlines, and rightly so. But I would be grateful to understand whether, in keeping this panel going, the Chair will also think more widely about community education, because neurodiversity is something that I think, as Deputy Joseph said, we can value. Individuals who are neurodiverse can bring great skills to our community, but equally they can be terribly misunderstood and feel terribly alienated. And therefore, in keeping it open, I hope, sir, that she can commit to looking at that education and education right across our community, because I think that would be of great value to this community of individuals.
I thank the member for the question, and I completely agree with him. I'll refer back to one of our recommendations, which was about awareness raising and education. And also the Education Minister, I know, is continuing with the work on inclusion that was started many years ago. And that's critical, because our society is a diverse society. And when we talk about diversity, it's not just gender and race that we're talking about, but also different neurotypes. And I think the awareness that is beginning to be increased in the island, that we will see more and more of that, and we will be able to understand each other and understand our communities more, and that will require change on various different levels. It will require change and understanding and acceptance, and it will require us to change the way we interact with people and to make accommodations for people, whether that be in the workplace or in our wider society. And I see all of those changes as being positive, not just for people who have a diagnosis of ADHD or indeed autism or other neurodiversities, but for every human being on our island to be accepted and to be understood and celebrated for their individuality and their the things that they can offer to our island.
Any supplemental to that, Deputy Gorse?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to ask the Chair, in terms of the investigations of the panel, whether they came to a view about whether medication should be a last resort, and to the extent that when we actually think of some things, some conditions where perhaps there can be almost a response in terms of medication, and you hear about the people who might be reliant on things like antidepressants when, as Deputy Coles has pointed out, there are alternative therapies, whether the situation that we have in terms of people seeking and having a problem in terms of getting these prescriptions has arrived at the failure of certain therapies, or because medication is almost being treated as the first resort.
I think I understand what the Deputy is asking. First of all, I think that's something that is for each individual to decide themselves between them and their healthcare practitioner. But generally, I understand, I think the point the Deputy is making, that sometimes we resort to medication first because it's probably cheaper, right? It's probably more, it probably costs less to offer medication than it does to offer, say, a course in life skills or to arrange peer support sessions. So I suppose my view would be that each patient who is diagnosed with any condition should have all treatment options that the NICE guidelines would state are available. There should be any and all treatment options available, not just medication.
Well, there's only 6 seconds left. So I think that brings the period of 15 minutes, therefore, to an end and closes questions more generally. We move on now to public business. Before we start, a decision needs to be made about whether the minimum lodging periods should be reduced for 3 matters currently listed on the order paper. The Minister for International Development, do you wish to make a proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow your proposition P81, Jersey Overseas Aid appointment of a non-States Commissioner, to be debated at this sitting?
I do indeed, sir. I can offer an explanation. It was down to diaries and the interview process that we underwent, and it transpires that we're a couple of days short. So I ask the Assembly's indulgence to have this matter debated at this session.
You propose that. Is that proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Seconded, sir.
Does any member wish to speak? Deputy Tadier?
Thank you, sir. Just to ensure due scrutiny of the decision to reduce the lodging period, could the Minister clarify what would happen if it was debated at the next sitting? Would that pose an insurmountable problem for the government and for her? And also emphasise why this is in the public interest to reduce the lodging period.
Does any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak? I call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. Yes, indeed, I can. It's not completely insurmountable. We have one commissioner who's been with us for 9 years, who retires from office on the 31st of December, and the following, the new commissioner wouldn't take office until the next States Assembly, if this States Assembly approve her appointment. So just for continuity and process, we ask for the lodging period to be reduced. So we don't have a gap in commissioners.
Those in favour of adopting...
We have the vote, please.
The appel is called for. Invite any members not present in the Assembly to return to their seats. The vote is on whether or not the lodging period for P81, Jersey Overseas Aid appointment of a non-States Commissioner, be debated at this sitting by reducing the lodging period. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 42 votes pour, no votes contre, 1 abstention. I beg your pardon, 44 votes pour, 1 vote abstaining and no votes contre. Very well. The next application is for the Minister of Sustainable Economic Development. Minister, do you wish to make the same, or a similar rather, proposition that the lodging period be reduced to allow your amendment to the proposition P82, support scheme for individuals qualifying to represent Jersey in off-island competitions, be debated at this sitting?
Yes, sir, I would like to make that proposition. As much as anything, I believe Deputy Kovac, who's the bringer of the proposition itself, is happy to accept the amendment, as I understand it. And so, in order to let that happen, we would need to reduce the lodging period. Thank you, sir.
Well, is it seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on it, St John?
Yes, sir, just to echo the words of the Minister, sir, we have had positive engagement with Deputy Kovac, and to offer my apologies to the Assembly for the delay in bringing this forward, but we wouldn't be able to support the original proposal, but we are able to support the amended proposal and ask members for their support. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy Tadier? Oh, sorry, Deputy Kovac. I do apologise.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'm grateful for the discussions I had with the ministers, and I'm willing to accept this amendment. And because my proposition is intending to support competitions that are also to be taken place in the first half of next year to allow timely implementing if this is passed by the Assembly, should be debated today, not deferred. And therefore, because I'm accepting the amendment, the reducing lodging period for the amendment is necessary as well.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Tadier?
Thanks, sir. You did invite me after all, sir.
I did.
So
Who'd have thought it? But
never
yes.
want to refuse it. So I think it's right that I asked the same question to this minister. I think whilst the public interest has been served in reducing the lodging period, could I ask why it wasn't possible to bring an amendment within the requisite lodging period, which I think obviously the deputy for the main proposition has lodged hers at least for 3 weeks. Why wasn't the department able to bring an amendment forward within the due time?
Does any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak. I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. In responding to Deputy Tadier, it can take a bit of time sometimes to work through these amendments. There's nothing else. The 3-week lodging period for the main proposition is not a long lodging period. And we work with Deputy Kovac. Obviously, the Constable of St John and myself were both speaking with Deputy Kovac over a period of days and possibly a kind of week and a half, and it just took that time to get to the position where we're all happy with the amendment. And so no other reason than that, sir. These things do take time, and 3 weeks isn't a long lodging period. Other than that, I would like to maintain the propositions.
Call for the appel. That is called for. Any members not in the Assembly, please return to the seats. The vote is on the truncation of the lodging period, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, and I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition is adopted. 45 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions. Finally, Chief Minister, do you wish to make the same proposition or a similar proposition for the lodging period to be reduced to allow your proposition P84, Control and Auditor General Board of Governance, appointment of chair and independent member, to be debated at this sitting?
Yes, I do. So could I just refer to Deputy Ferry, who is acting as rapporteur for the...
Certainly, Deputy, yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I would like to seek the Assembly's leave to truncate the lodging period for P84 so that it may be considered at this state sitting. I've written to members this week, sir, to outline the reasons why. But interviews for the roles were held in October, and the next available state sitting to consider the proposition would not be until Tuesday, the 21st of January 2025. Therefore, because of the extended period between now and the first sitting, I would ask members for their support to reduce the lodging period. And perhaps in order to preempt a question from Deputy Tadier, this is in order to complete arrangements for the appointments before Christmas. So if approved by the Assembly, so that we can mitigate the risk of losing these candidates. So I make that proposition.
Seconded?
Yes. Second.
Does any member wish to speak? If no member wishes to speak, thank you very much. Shall we take that as a contribution to the Greffiers Fighting Fund?
Apologies.
Not at all. I close the debate. Those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against? Proposition is adopted on a show. Very well. We now move to the main order paper, business. The first item is the draft shipping registration Jersey Amendment Regulations P46, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Main responder is the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Shipping Registration Jersey Amendment Regulations 2000. The states make these regulations under Article 13 of the Shipping Jersey Law 2002.
Minister.
Sir, before the Minister commences, may I declare a conflict in that I'm a representative person and withdraw from the debate?
Certainly, yes, Connetar. Minister, are you able to move the principles in 10 minutes?
I believe so, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And, sir, these amendments to the Shipping Registration Jersey Regulations 2004 seek to strengthen the obligation of representative persons, and indeed, it is correct, also place new obligations upon them. These amendments have been developed to address deficiencies in Jersey's representative person law roles, as seen through the regulations. These have caused difficulties for the Jersey Ships Registry in terms of tracing owners of suspect vessels or those that pose a risk to Jersey. There is therefore an opportunity to make Jersey's Ships Registry more resilient and secure by strengthening the link between representative persons and the owners of the vessels that they represent. So I think it's important to set a bit of context in this instance, sir, because when the shipping registry was created, the island was operating in a much different global environment. And today, sir, we see the importance of supporting sanctions, various sanctions regimes that are in operation and that Jersey adheres to. And it is incredibly important from a financial services perspective that all aspects of Jersey's economy are seen to be supporting the implementation of those sanctions when they are needed. And this is very much exactly what these changes are designed to do, to make sure that Jersey is in a position to support the implementation of sanctions. And sadly, we have seen at least one instance where this was made difficult because of the resignation of a representative person at the very moment that a vessel was being impounded by a foreign nation because they felt that the owner was a sanctioned individual. And that in itself made it very, very difficult for the registry to identify the owner as a result of that. So this strengthening of the role of the representative person and the link between them and the owners of vessels they represent will be done by introducing the following amendments. Representative persons will have to give 30 days notice of resignation via the registrar, and they will have to hold identifying information, effectively that which matches that of financial services providers, of owners of vessels they represent, and they will have to provide this information to the registry upon request. As a result of these two new obligations, there are offences for serious and willful non-compliance. Given the recent increased focus on coordinated international sanctions, as I mentioned, it is crucial, in my view, and the view of the government, that Jersey understands who owns vessels on our ships register. By better understanding who owns those vessels on the Jersey's registry, we are protecting the island from undesirable vessels that may wish to, or undesirable people that may wish to abuse the registry by bypassing sanctions and other security and reputational-based risks. Additionally, these amendments will significantly reduce the administrative burden currently on the ships registry, which is as a direct result of the legislative gaps we are trying to address. So government is clear that it expects the highest standards around the Jersey Ships Registry, and these amendments reflect this. The registry carries Jersey's ensign around the world, and it is not unreasonable to place firmer responsibilities around the privilege of building a business from that very registry. Following the introduction of these amendments, the intention is to review the ships registry's business model to ensure it is as effective as possible and positioned towards a market within which the registry can flourish. This review will be conducted closely with the ports of Jersey. And so I know States members have received communications from somebody who is a representative person and is clearly not in favour of these changes. And there is a large amount that I agree with in what that person has said, because what is happening here is we are changing the role of the representative person. We are strengthening that role, and we are saying, if you wish, if an islander, or it doesn't have to be an islander, it can be external companies, there are external companies that act as representative persons. If somebody or an entity wishes to act as a representative person, we expect them now to hold knowledge of the client, of their client, and therefore hold knowledge of the vessel and the ownership of that vessel. So in the instance where they are suspected of being owned by a sanctioned person or involved in some other criminality, that the registry is able to quickly and effectively make the link and identify the owner, which is something which sadly is not the situation right now. I think it is really important that members understand we did go to consultation. That consultation lasted 4 weeks. There are 8 representative owners registered by the registry itself, and 4 of those representative persons responded. So 50% of the representative persons responded to that consultation, which means that it was a significant amount of the people who are of this effect. And from my perspective as Minister, sir, I make no apology for saying that if somebody wishes to use the registry to operate a business or to operate as part of a business, they must do so within the confines that the registry demands. And as an island that has an economy absolutely built upon the financial services industry, where reputation is important and required, and understanding of our clients is important and required by international authorities, it's really important that the shipping registry is not seen as a weak link in that defence. And that is what these arrangements are designed to do. Make sure that there isn't a weak link in Jersey's defence against international crime and sanctions busting in that respect, sir. And so I do hope that members are able to support this proposition. They are simple amendments, but they do change the business model. And so from that perspective, as the Minister with responsibility for the registry, what I'm saying is, yes, we will likely have fewer vessels on the registry. It may be that representative persons choose not to serve the registry anymore. That is their choice. I have no problem with that. What I am trying to build now is a registry where anyone who is flying the Jersey Ensign can know that that is a registered vessel, is a vessel that is registered on a high-quality registry, where we know the people who own the vessels. And that, I think, is something that members should be able to support, particularly given the role Jersey plays in the international financial services sector. With that, sir, I move the regulations.
Are the principles seconded? We're now at that point where I would ask that the adjournment is proposed. So is the adjournment proposed? Very well. We then stand adjourned until 2:15. May have been here for a long time.